All right, welcome in to Check the Mic for a very special show today. We are coming to you live, of course, from the Mike Vrabel is part of the Bill Belichick Coaching Tree studio, all, as always, sponsored by our good friends at FanDuel. No Steve today, but we do have the triumphal return of our guy Vic Troha for the Boo Boo Breakdown for anyone that's been listening for long enough. How's it going, Vic?
Hey, good, man. Thanks for having me in the studio. I'm excited for an awesome injury talk day, right?
Absolutely, yeah. First time in the Check the Mic studio.
Yeah.
You were with us in the old studio over the road. What do you think of the place?
I love it. This is a better setup, I think, for you guys. I think green is your color.
Yeah. Well, look, it matched with the jersey. And this time, there's no green screen for this to show up as NFL branded merchandise like it did accidentally the last time I wore this thing. So anyone that's been listening long enough obviously has heard Boo Boo Breakdown shows before. But for anyone that hasn't, who are you and why do we care what you have to say about injuries?
It's a good question, So, name's Vic Troha. I am a wellness clinician. I have a wellness studio here in Cincinnati at the Cincinnati Sports Club. And basically, I got two passions that I'm really into: injuries and fixing people, and sports and NFL. So, basically, when we first talked a while back, years ago, it was just kind of talking about some of these NFL injuries, and then it kind of evolved into me following it more and getting the details of all these players that are going down. And, I'm here again because I just love to talk ball.
Yeah, nice. And I like it because, it's so important now. Fantasy football is huge with injuries, but also, it's such an important part of how teams are going to fare in any given year. And so much of it is a lot of people being like, well, we're not doctors. But this guy's got a hamstring injury to keep an eye on, or, blah, blah. And so half of kind of preseason content for me and Steve is always like, well, this guy's got an injury, just beware. We don't know if that's going to affect him. I like the idea of being able to bring you on and we can go through some of these teams and figure out whose injuries is actually going to affect this year and who's like, he had an injury last year, but it's no longer anything to be concerned by. So the plan here, it's a monster all 32 team show. We're going to go division by division, team by team, and we're basically going to be like, all right, here's the players to be concerned about. Here's the players that have a relevant injury to discuss. And then for the more important ones, we'll spend a little bit of time and break down what we're actually talking about and how big of a concern it actually is. Sound good?
Let's do it. So,
according to this master list of teams and alphabetized, I say we start in the AFC East and we go to the Buffalo Bills. Mm-hmm. So who are the main players to be concerned about when it comes to injuries for Buffalo?
So the Bills are a funny one because they're always a team that you see like top 5, top 10 injuries, but coming into this season, there's really not a lot for them. They had an issue with their safety, Cole Bishop, but it's not really anything other than like a sideline knee issue. Right now, it's basically questionable for week 1. He looks like he's going full speed already in practice. They were talking about his meniscus and MCL when he first got injured, but this was a simple one for me when I was looking at the Bills because I said they're always beat up, but somehow their players return.
Yeah.
Other one you have to look at obviously is Josh Allen, his durability as he gets older. But he's just a physical player in general, so you're going to see him banged up. But he's actually just in the history of the way he plays, I think he is a pretty durable player too.
Yeah, he will be. I mean, we've talked about him before as a sort of fascinating long-term case study in terms of how he holds up based off the way he plays. Mm-hmm. That's definitely going to be an interesting thing. Are there any, as a quick aside, and team one, we said before, when you used to hear the word microfracture, right, it was like, oh, real problem. Are there any words or any injuries now where when they show up, it's a massive, like you're immediately, that player's got real problems?
Yeah, a lot of time it's revision or...
when they go in again?
Yeah, when they go in again. So basically what happens is like when you see a revision, you know that there was some complication from the first one.
Right.
Scar tissue buildup, didn't heal properly, something like that. You basically hit the reset button on that recovery. And, we'll talk about some of the players that have had revisions just from their injuries and their surgeries in the offseason. But that right now, I think, is probably the number one that I would look at and say, I'm pretty concerned when I see that word.
Okay, so Buffalo, not a whole lot to talk about.
Easy.
Let's jump ahead to the Miami Dolphins. Mm-hmm. Who are we dealing with here?
So it's another one where I mean, it kind of depends on if you want to talk about Tyreek Hill.
Yeah, well, we can talk about Tyreek. And then, so you've got Tua's over at Atlanta now,
Yep.
made the move. But yeah, so we'll at least mention Tyreek Hill. But who I see you've got Devon Achane as the kind of main guy.
Yep. So Tyreek, real quick, I am concerned about his career. I'm not going to lie. I'm concerned because when you see a player of that caliber completely dislocate a knee, there is a lot of damage that happens. The recovery rate of that is not great, and especially for an older player who relies on their athleticism. He is probably one of the biggest concerns for me just overall, and not saying that I'm worried about him being able to play wide receiver. It's him being able to play to the level that he was at. So he, in week 4, he blew out his knee, multiple torn ligaments, ACL. His recovery from that is actually very comparable to other receivers that have had knee dislocations, and it's not pretty. Another name that comes to mind is like a Tank Dell, who's had multiple knee injuries like that. You just don't know. It's a big question mark for that. So I'll be interested to see what happens, even though, it might not be with the Dolphins. And then Devon Achane, so he's had shoulder injuries, AC joint sprain technically. So, AC joint sprains are really lingering issues, especially in the running back. And part of that reason is because you have a joint that gets compressed every time you hit somebody.
Right.
You lower your shoulder, that gets compressed, it gets flared up. So he's had enough time where I think that he's going to be fine and recover, but I don't know about the long-term durability of an AC joint sprain because the recurrence rate of that can be high if he's hit at the right spot, especially what you see is when players get landed on sideways, like on their shoulder.
Right. I was going to say, are they when you see AC joint sprains, particularly if it's been a bad one to begin with, do they ever heal 100%, or is that always going to be a problem, lethal weapon style, right? Like, once you've done it, are you inevitably, like, I know I used to play soccer with a guy who was like your man from Lethal Weapon, where like he would, when he went in goal and dived, like if he dived the wrong way, the shoulder would come out.
Yeah.
And it was brutal. Like, if once it's happened, are you in trouble?
That's more like when people have instability, so a lot of shoulder instability. That's when you feel like, okay, there's just not, unless they have a complete repair of that, there's a lot of probability that that's going to happen again. AC joints, if you take enough time, they'll heal. But when you are in that limbo and it hasn't fully healed, all it takes is like one wrong pressure point, and then that's going to flare up again. So I think he's going to be good to go. But we obviously like things like ball security, pass pro, extending that arm straight and getting pressure on that AC joint, that's going to start to affect him a little bit.
Okay, let's. What do we got for the? Well, the next two are easy because apparently there's basically nothing for the Jets or the Patriots.
Not as of now, man. I'm not too worried about it. Now, when you look at the Patriots, though, Will Campbell is kind of one of those guys where you said was his lack of productivity at the end of the season because of his knee.
Right.
So he had a grade 3 MCL sprain. When you think about that like, just for everybody who doesn't know the context, grades, the higher they are, the worse they are.
Grade
right?
3 is bad.
Grade 3, next one's tear.
Right. Full tear.
That is a very serious issue to be playing on, and it's very painful.
Right.
I do not blame him for having, limited mobility and stuff. Now, do you put that all on the reason why he didn't perform that well? That I guess we'll see. But to be honest, he's going to be fine coming week 1. But I just wanted to hit on why that was so important last year, especially on the inside of that knee where he's trying to get some leverage, and it seems like he just wasn't able to do so.
I didn't know what to make of that because Mitchell Schwartz, who we reference, all the time on the show, former All-Pro offensive tackle, Mitchell Schwartz basically said, "Look, an MCL injury for an offensive tackle, it's not much. You can play through that. It's fine. It's not a problem." But as he said, like a grade 3 MCL, even just from a pain standpoint, I'm sure they had him dosed up to the eyeballs and painkillers. But like you would think that's a fairly major thing to be dealing with in a game, in a game at a position where you're going to have to basically repeat the same movement over and over again in terms of pass blocking sets. And then obviously you add in the added layers of complication of, oh, by the way, it's Will Anderson Jr. this week. Like, good luck with that.
Yeah.
It feels like it has to have been a problem.
Honestly, there's a lot of, I think that a lot of this also comes with apprehension, right? So you know you're on a vulnerable knee.
Right.
Then
And also grade 3 has to make a difference. Like,
yeah,
whatever,
absolutely.
right? Yeah, maybe a grade 1 MCL isn't anything to worry about for an offensive tackle. Grade 3, though? Like,
Yep.
I mean, I've sprained an MCL before as a wide receiver, and all I know is it hurt like hell, and I didn't trust my knee anymore. Like, and I had no idea what grade that was, but I'm sure it wasn't 3.
Right. So then you're dealing with lack of trust in it. Now, obviously, an off season of rehab and stuff, I think he's going to be good to go.
All right, so that's the first division done. Let's skip ahead to the Baltimore Ravens for the AFC North.
Yeah. So this is going to be an interesting division just in general because there were some significant injuries for each team.
Yeah.
But when we look, let me pull that up real quick.
This is an interesting one because the main player you have here is Nnamdi Madubuike,
Right.
the defensive tackle,
Right. Yep.
who at one point this looked like it was a potential career-ending injury, and then all of a sudden it was like actually he's going to be back this year. And so where are we with Madubuike?
So the hard thing is differentiating between and you know what a stinger is, I'm sure, but like a stinger, lightning bolts down your shoulder from compression on your neck, versus a complete disc disruption, protrusion, disc in his neck. But right now what they're thinking is that it's just like a disc irritation. So his neck and cervical spine, he has irritation in the soft spot between his vertebrae. If he can successfully rehab and strengthen through that, it should almost recenter itself. It just depends on how bad that is. And right now, going into week 1, he's questionable, but it's honestly one of those where they don't want to push him back.
Yeah.
Okay, because it's a very, very vulnerable injury. Unlike other things where you say people can play through and stuff like that, this is one of those injuries where you look at it and you say, I'm just not going to force it. So
does the fact that at one point this was sort of seen as this could be the end of his career, and now it's more like actually, he's going to be back. It's just the timeline is the questionable thing. Does the fact that it sort of moved from one bucket to the other, that has to be a good sign, right? Like you wouldn't. I mean, obviously the fact that we were ever talking about like, oh, this could be the end of his career is bad, but the fact that we're no longer talking about that, or at least the team isn't, and the team is now thinking, okay, it's just a timeline thing, mean it's not actually as severe as maybe it looked to begin with.
Yep, and something that people might not know is neck and concussions are clearance injuries. So they have to be medically cleared.
Okay.
So he's got to be cleared in order to play, which it already looks positive for him.
Right.
They would not send somebody out there if they think anything significant like a paralysis or long-term damage. So
it's got to be amongst the worst positions, though, for a neck injury, right? Like a defensive tackle, a guy who's basically using his head.
Use your head all the
around.
time, right?
Like,
it's one of the first points of contact. So I definitely think that they're overly cautious with this injury for sure.
Right. All right, so that's Madubuike. What about Lamar Jackson based off just his injury history at this point? Is there anything to be concerned about for him other than simply the sheer volume of injuries he's racked up at this point?
That's the thing. But Lamar has done a really good job of understanding his body. I think he understands how he can evolve his play. Given his mobility as a quarterback and his history of injuries, yeah, like there's always a risk, and you're getting up there in age. But like on a side note, age is not as important anymore. These people, as they get older, there's better medical treatment. They understand how to adjust their play, especially with somebody at a high level like Lamar Jackson. I'm not as worried about him getting injured in what has previously caused him to be, out for a couple weeks, as long as he plays smart. I don't think there's anything in his medical history that I'm sitting there like, he's going to go down. I just want to make sure that he's safe, right? Like he's going to slide, knows when to slide. He's not going to pull, a Jackson dart, right? He's not going to be the kind of guy that's going to try to truck somebody. So,
do you have a take? We kind of talked about this again in the speculative, who the hell knows type of way recently. How quarterbacks in particular, but I guess any position, like how these guys are going to be aging from now on, and whether it's because you used to hit the age like Joe Montana, right? Mid-30s, the guy was toast. The sheer weight of injuries at that point, the man was a shell of himself. And you watch him walk around now, like the guy's, he's clearly not 100% in terms of Like you see those videos every now and again, these people be like, hey, just a reminder, the normal level of average daily pain is 0. Yeah. Not for Joe Montana, it's not. You know, I don't know what he's dealing with, but he's feeling something every day.
Yeah.
Those guys at 35 used to be done. And now Tom Brady, you know, Aaron Rodgers, like 40 is the new 30. But you've got this interesting world now where that sort of trend of pushing age curves further and further into the future is crossing over with Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, these sort of physical running threat quarterbacks that are taking more hits than Tom Brady ever did, right? Mm-hmm. How do you think that that's going to sort of net out in terms of how this next generation of quarterbacks age?
It's kind of funny because as athletes get better and medicine advances, players can play longer. There is a better understanding of what to do and what not to do as an athletic quarterback or a quarterback that gets beat up. But then you just also have these one-off quarterbacks that you just say, how can they take this every time? Like Josh Allen is a great example. Yeah. Gets beat up. He still comes back, right? I look at Pat Mahomes. Pat Mahomes kind of sometimes has this like, you know, almost like an injury tag to him, but he's not really ever injured that much when it takes him out. Like he sprains his ankles, right? Blah, blah, blah. But he plays on it. They just know based off of their medical care, their body, how much they can take and how much they can play. And that's why you're seeing that number creep up more. It's late 30s, 40s. And then, they're going to lose mobility. But if that's not all they rely on, these guys are playing longer.
I think people probably wildly underestimate the amount of the improvement in people just taking care of themselves in the last 30, 40 years. Mm-hmm. Like, I honestly wonder how much serious sort of body maintenance professional athletes were doing in the 80s, right?
Right.
It almost looks like nothing. Like, I saw a video, the World Cup's going on right now, right? Lionel Messi's 39 years old and looks as good as he's ever looked, effectively. Guy's still shredded, six-pack, like looks like a professional athlete. I saw a video the other day of Maradona. I think it was 35 or 36, but he'd been retired for a bit. He was at somebody's testimonial, and he was just a giant fat guy, like really overweight, like massively fat.
Yep.
And he was, so like 3-4 years younger than Messi is now, and had been retired for a while. It's like clearly, like Maradona just didn't, I'm sure he did training, just the standard training that you do for a soccer player, but like the man wasn't doing extra whatever, right, to keep himself in shape. And as soon as he finished, he was out. Like, there has to be a huge amount of that. I don't know how much general longevity work Joe Montana was doing on his body in the 80s, but I'm guessing almost nothing. And then you get to now, and, you see the workout videos or whatever, like the stuff Mahomes, Derrick Henry, all these guys are doing just to stay anywhere near in peak professional. Like, that has to have a longevity effect.
Absolutely. And not to mention, like, they have access to so much more.
Right.
I mean, you're talking about red light and different therapeutic modalities. These guys are in contact with the best surgeons in the world. Nutrition is huge. Everything like that combines, and they're healthier. Right. It's just they're healthier and they recover better.
So moving over to the Cincinnati Bengals, another big quarterback one. I mean, the only thing keeping Joe Burrow at this point from being seen clearly as one of the top quarterbacks in the NFL, like, a serious argument to be the best, is the injuries, right? Can you keep him upright for the entire season?
Well, we talked about this before. I am a believer in somebody's injury prone. I am.
Same. There are people that say there's no such thing as injury proneness. That, to me, seems insane.
Yep.
Like, I understand you can also be unlucky, but there are clearly people that are built less, out of granite than other people.
Correct.
Like, there's no way you can tell me that Brett Favre was no more or less durable than Joe Burrow.
Exactly.
Right? The same hits for each one of those guys over any period of time. Burrow is going to get hurt more than Favre did.
Right on. Absolutely. And that's, looking at Joe Burrow's history, it's not consistent, right? Which is another kind of weird aspect. It'd be different if somebody's like, hey, he constantly has like this right hip that flares up, blah, blah, blah. It's just not that. And especially this last one, coming off that grade 3 turf toe, that's a hard injury to recover from, mainly because you aren't putting pressure on that foot right after this surgery. You are off. And then you come back and you're like, where's the atrophy at? How is his leg handling it? Is he able to plant and drive? And then you combine that with his past knee histories, and even his wrist.
Yeah.
I think that it's one of two things. Can he be more injury prone? Probably. The other thing is his style of play.
Yeah.
And you would know way more than I would on this if there is a decrease in injury and effectiveness in a player if they just get rid of the ball sooner versus somebody like how much more is he giving his team by hanging on the ball for like that extra second.
I mean, even just did you see that flag football tournament during the offseason sometime? Like the way Burrow was playing in that was wildly reckless and like, dude, what are you doing? This is flag football. This isn't that serious.
Yep.
Like if he's doing that in a flag football tournament, of course he's definitely adding to whatever risk and stress his body is dealing with the way he plays the game in real contact football.
Right, no doubt. I mean, I'm not worried about him coming out and playing. I'm worried just about at his elite talent, his style of play, what's next. It's just that is the question for him. And I don't think there's any player in the NFL right now that I would literally say, I'm just interested to see what he hurts this year.
Yeah, I mean, he's had more curious injuries than anyone else I can think of. Like the calf that year where it happened in training camp, right? It just like randomly tweaked on him. I can't remember if he was pushing off on it to scramble or pushing off on it in a drop back, but like there was a video of it, right? Like it just randomly tweaked and then that lingered for like most of the season. The wrist injury was one where it was fairly spontaneous. I know he'd done something and then he'd done something before the famous video where he just threw the ball and it's like, oh, I can't actually, I can't even grip the ball anymore.
That scapholunate ligament in his wrist, which is like, I mean, you see that happen, but for just to be one of the oddball injuries that you see come out.
Yeah, like he's had a sequence of these injuries where they're not just non-contact, but they're non-contact that aren't even sort of explainable by, well, that was an obvious sort of twist in the turf type of thing. It was just non-contact where his body just went, nope, not doing that today.
I mean, I do have to say when he tore, that was in 2023 when he tore his ACL, MCL, we all probably would have tore our ACL.
Yeah, I mean, he's also had one where like an offensive line collapsed in his knee. Yeah, that's definitely more explainable.
Yeah, yep.
So we don't think anything he's coming back from is going to be a problem. It's more we're stacking up a pretty concerning profile at this point of just he's regularly injured.
Yeah, and just see how his body handles it this year, you know. It's going to be an interesting case study.
Anybody else on the Bengals we need to talk about?
Not really. Just something to monitor is DJ Turner. He's coming off some calf issues, but the reason I want to bring him up is they're going to rely on him a lot this year. He's going to be a big name for them, and calf injuries tend to be one of those that linger a long time until they're fully healed. So if he's 100% and he's not having any hesitation with it, I'm not worried, but just be aware that if that creeps up, I wouldn't be surprised.
And he's now, I mean, he's in the sort of midst of that big contract extension talks as well. So that's not ideal timing for him, his point of view, to be coming off it or dealing with a calf injury right as you're trying to get paid. The Cleveland Browns.
Well, probably the biggest name is Quinshawn Junkins. He destroyed his ankle, a really bad lateral ankle sprain, and it was a high ankle sprain. So for those who don't know, high ankle sprains take longer to recover than low ankle sprains. Low ankle sprains tend to look a little worse. But he is going to be, I think, good to go. But when you have a high ankle sprain, you are more likely just to have chronic ankle instability. You probably remember a couple years ago, Cooper Kupp got something called a tightrope surgery, and it was because of these recurring ankle sprains year after year. So he's like, let me just fix it. Let me get the tightrope. And he did. He handled it well. But the one thing that with Quinshawn is he's young. He's coming back from this. I don't know what his high school, ankle injuries were or anything like that. But it's just going to be about how can he cut, how can he balance on it, and I wouldn't be surprised if he has a brace on and he's running with that. But that was a pretty gnarly high ankle sprain that he suffered. So
is that one of those things that's different for regular humans that, because again, you said once you injure an ankle, the chance of you injuring an ankle in the future just exponentially goes up. Like, anyone that sprained an ankle, you're much more likely to sprain the ankle going forward. Mm-hmm. Is that just because most of us sprain an ankle, maybe do the odd exercise, but basically you leave it alone, it heals? Relative to NFL players who sprain an ankle and you've got this regimen, do they ever 100% recover, or is that a permanent problem for them as the same way it is for other people?
So studies show that ankle sprains, high and low, are going to cause chronic instability and issues. Can they fully recover? Absolutely. But the majority of people will be more susceptible to injuring it again, and especially with high ankles, because high ankles take 2 to 3 times longer than a low ankle sprain to come back. So what does that tell you? That tells you that people are probably going to try to push back sooner because they're like, dang, this ankle is keeping me out for a long time. They come back a little bit sooner than they should, and they're dealing with a worse injury. So you see that. I mean, it's not that I think that people can't come back, especially athletes, high-end athletes, from ankle issues, but so often you see somebody with just chronic ankle stuff. I look at 2 players that have the most chronic ankle issues in the NFL right now. They've had 6 to 8 ankle sprains since they've been in the career, right? Which is anywhere from 2 to 8 weeks out. Christian McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley.
Right.
Both running backs, high velocity, high cutting. And those are guys that take care of their body, but it just recurs. That's what happens.
And is there any additional concern for a guy who's as big as he is? I mean, he's 220 plus pounds. Like, is that a bigger problem than if he was 190?
Yeah, I mean, with more force, more weight equals more force. But you also deal with this. It's a style of play too, and if he's cutting too much on that's going to be more of a risk factor. So they do say that previous ankle sprains is the strongest predictor of having an ankle sprain. So for him, it's just coming back and making sure that he's fully healthy and he's not feeling like he's pushing back too fast.
Anyone else a significant player to talk about for Cleveland in terms of injuries?
See how Deshaun Watson's Achilles plays this year.
So what should realistic expectations be for him physically? Because we're dealing that has to be. I can't think of too many players that have had back-to-back Achilles injuries on the same Achilles. Like, we've come across that for ACLs before, where a guy's torn an ACL, come back and almost immediately torn the same ACL again, and that's its own problem. But I can't think of a guy who's done that to his Achilles before, other than Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, and Deshaun was weird because he re-injured his in the healing process.
Apparently.
Yeah, like down in Miami, he's healing, and boom, pops again. I would almost put that on just a delayed recovery. I don't think I would look at that and say, like, it makes it that much worse. But with him, I mean, you're going to discount mobility a little bit. You're going to see how he powers through and drives through that foot. I can't really predict because I haven't seen him play enough over the last couple of years to see, like, how he's actually going to come back and rehab from this. From everything I'm hearing, like, he's doing fine, but it will really come to see when he has to have some more pocket presence and scramble and stuff like that. We'll see what happens.
Him and Daniel Jones. So the Achilles injuries are kind of interesting because they used to be way worse than like an ACL or whatever, right? In terms of timeline, recovery, et cetera. And then it seems like there was this shift in surgical technique. Was Rodgers the first guy to have this done, or one of the first? But all of a sudden we're shifting the way that we're actually repairing Achilles, and the timeline has come way down, and that's why Rodgers is talking about coming back within the same season, which would have been insane previously under like the full 12-month, year-long timeline. But as much as the timeline for recovery and getting out there seems to be shorter, the guys that have done it don't look to be the same or anything like the same when they come back. So Rodgers, Kirk Cousins, but both those guys have been pretty old when they've had this happen. Now we're going to get a look at Deshaun Watson, who's 30, and Daniel Jones, who's not even 30 yet. These are the first guys that I can think of who are young and, quote unquote, who are coming off this sort of accelerated timeline. And we're going to get an idea of, like, can you recover quickly, but everybody is going to look physically diminished, or is it just the guys that are 40 that are going to look physically diminished? Like, can you come back with an accelerated timeline and look physically the same if you're 30 years old?
It's fascinating. Honestly, I think the one thing that's too fascinating about it is we don't have a good history of quarterbacks with Achilles ruptures. I mean, we really don't until recently. You got Cousins.
Why is that
Watson.
happening?
I think
it seems like not just, I mean, that's definitely, that as a subset of the trend is interesting that, yeah, all of a sudden quarterbacks are blowing these Achilles out. But like across the board, Achilles injuries seem to be way up.
They are. And we were texting about this not long ago, but I think one of the reasons that Achilles ruptures are happening more is I think these players are bigger, faster, stronger, and they're loading their leg more. I mean, they put more force through a tendon that isn't meant to handle that much force. And a lot of Achilles ruptures don't happen out of nowhere. There's precursors to that. So you'll see guys literally take a step and it pop versus, here's a great example, and I'm sure we'll talk about him. George Kittle ruptured his Achilles tendon, but if you watch the video on how he ruptured it, he had himself preventing himself going backwards to the sideline with somebody tackling him as he planted on that leg.
Right.
That's a lot of pressure and load. And then you flip it and you look at Najee Harris. Najee Harris just stepped
put
backward.
his ground. Yeah, put his foot on the ground.
Right. Daniel Jones just put his foot on the ground. So
those are the ones that I'm seeing more of than ever before. Like I get that there are certain mechanisms where, you know, a 250-pound guy with an extra 250 pounds on top of him and his foot goes in the ground the wrong way, you're like, that is putting a ton of force through a ligament or a tendon that is not going to take it and eventually it snaps. That makes sense to me. But we're seeing so many more where it's like, you're telling me your body just can't handle that? Like it's just stepping on the ground. Like, and I don't know if this is, you know, the Bader-Meinhof effect, but like once I found out that your Achilles could just go in the random course of a day, it's everywhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you saw, you know, I mean, this is going back years, but like Kyle Brandt doing his Good Morning Football thing, blowing his Achilles out. But like, you know, I see it happen everywhere all the time now. That I like people just running up those, you know, Ninja Warrior, like the wall thing, right? Like guy just tries. I saw a guy take a step to run up one of those, and his Achilles just blows out, and he thought he'd been shot from behind. It's like I'd never seen those before, and now they're everywhere. Like, is this actually an epidemic of human bodies blowing Achilles, or did I just not know about that before, and now I'm noticing them everywhere?
Well, if you ask any ortho doc, the number one Achilles rupture happens in middle-aged men.
Basketball.
Who play basketball, go a ninja thing, go to a trampoline park, and then boom, pops
We
it.
had, back in the day at PFF, we had Solomon Wilcots, you know, former, I mean, he was in the office, and we were all playing basketball at the Y, and he was like, yeah, I stopped playing basketball at the Y when I blew my Achilles out. And he was like, yeah, he was like, it will happen. He wasn't even, you know, oh, it's a risk, you got to worry about it. He's like, no, at your age, you will blow an Achilles out. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
That's and now I'm terrified of blowing an Achilles out doing anything.
Oh, you
Just
don't
like
want it.
Running forward, you know, anything that puts any force on the lower part of my leg. I'm like, what if my Achilles just snaps now?
It's terrifying.
It's
like
awful.
Stepping backward off a ladder. It's
Right.
Like,
There's so many stupid movements I do in my life where I'm like, that's probably putting stress through my Achilles. You probably shouldn't do that. It's terrifying.
Yep.
I hate that.
So I think that's like, you know, with guys like Daniel Jones, you can't really explain it. All I can say is there was a precursor to it. There had to have been something. It's calf fatigue, calf soreness, irritation, whatever that might be.
I mean, do you have any theories on why there's this uptick in them? Like, are we just talking about suddenly everybody is bigger, faster, stronger, and this is an inevitable, where we found a weak point on the body, right? And inevitably that's the thing that's going to start to give out.
Yeah, I think part of it is also like these guys train so hard. It's like they don't give it rest. A vulnerable injury that doesn't get rest, off-season workouts, in-season workouts, sprints, all of that stuff. And there's no recovery time. And that's when you see 3/4 of the way through a season, a quarterback just dropping back and boom, it goes. Or a running back running into the flat, steps backwards and out of nowhere. I think the helpful thing is there's advancement in surgeries right now. So they do the speed bridge repair, which is basically they reattach the Achilles into the heel bone, and they do like a crisscross suture, and it's been very successful. Recovery is going better, but what you're also seeing is after your Achilles rupture surgery, you're going to have calf weakness for like 18 months. on that same side. And then 15 to 25% of people that have a ruptured Achilles come back with calf pain. So then you're guarding, then you're not planting off that foot. So it's something interesting to keep an eye on, because if this keeps on happening, it's almost, you have to do a deeper dive then on why.
Do you think there's anything to the surfaces that they're playing on now with so much turf and so much, because with the greatest will in the world, there's less give beneath a turf field than there is grass, because you're, soil under grass, right? It's just, there's more give in it.
There's a lot of truth to that, because it's causing your ankle to dorsiflex more when you don't slide at all.
And it doesn't matter, the fact that the injury can take place on grass, because even the teams playing on grass are spending half their time playing on turf, and other stadium, nobody's playing purely on grass all the time, right? So you don't get that. There's always going to be the factor of turf affecting it, even if the actual tear comes on grass or it's from a team that plays on grass, because half their games are in a dome or whatever.
That would be an interesting study, seeing the amount of Achilles tears that happen in a season or over 5 years or 10 years, and then comparing it, was it on grass or turf?
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyone else on the Browns to touch on before we move on?
No, I think we got it.
All right, Pittsburgh.
Not too much with Pittsburgh, to be honest. I'm just interested to see what happens with Aaron Rodgers coming back.
Yeah.
But it's more about just how durable he is.
He did look better last year physically than he did the first year coming back from the Achilles.
Correct. And
now, the problem is you're confounding that by the fact that he's now in his 40s and headed in the wrong direction from an overall physical standpoint. It's like, can those two things intersect, or is he just, on the decline permanently?
Yeah, and at that age, you can't really tell. I guess this year is going to be a good indicator of that. But I thought he did pretty well recovering from his Achilles. But year 2 after Achilles, just like an ACL, year 2 is much better performance-wise than year 1 back.
Is there any obvious cliff in terms of aging from all the memes are when you hit your 40s, right? Stuff just starts breaking. Is that true, or is it there's a line somewhere, but it can be 35, it can be 40, it can be 45. It depends on the person. Yeah. Or is it no, when you're in your 40s, stuff is going to start to break when you're playing, professional football. There's no way around that.
Yeah, I guess in professional football, it's more case dependent on the person, but in general populations, they say mid-30s, mid to late 30s is when you start to see these uptick in orthopedic injuries.
And again, you would assume that the Maradona-Messi conversation, the fact that a guy, a professional athlete is putting so much more maintenance and just general taking care of themselves, that let's push that 5 years upwards for athletes versus the rest of us, right? Yep. But it does mean that when you hit that line around your 40, you're playing with fire at that point.
Yeah, and it's funny. I would not be surprised if we see that number slowly creep up, but I do not see it getting too much over 40. I really don't. That's a really hard age for you to perform at a high level at. So.
Yeah, even if professional athletes can sort of push the age higher, there is this inevitability of a certain point in your life. It's a meme for a reason, right? At a certain point in your life, the elasticity ceases to exist. You become more brittle, and stuff just starts to break. Mm-hmm. And that's without having a 300-pound man jump on top of you. If that, there's just no way. Yeah. You can mitigate it, and you can, if you can probably do a good job of hiding it if you play it a certain way and avoid a lot of hits. But at some point, you're going to take the wrong hit to a guy who's 25, 300 pounds and made out of elastic, and you're going to break. Mm-hmm. And there's probably no way of stopping that. You can't. There's just no way you're going to be able to push that up to 50 or whatever, because the guy he's made of glass at that point.
Yep. And sometimes your body just tells you when to quit.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, that's 2 divisions down. Before we go any further, the biggest stage in world soccer is here, and every goal changes everything. And now FanDuel is giving you a reason to root for every single one. Introducing Every Goal Pays. Bet on a match and get bonus bets for every goal scored in that match. That's right, more goals means more bonus bets, and all you have to do is turn on your token. Let's see. This is a little Brony pre-recorded by a couple of days, but it's still Messi should still be in this tournament based off my knowledge. I don't think he'll have played yet, but anyway, spectacular tournament so far with all of the stars coming out, firing in goals. Insane race for the Golden Boot. It's been absolutely nuts. From the opening whistle to the final kick, let there be goals on FanDuel. Visit FanDuel.com/33rd to get started now. 21 plus in selected states for Kansas in affiliation with Kansas Star Casino. 18 plus in D.C., Kentucky, and Wyoming. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. 1-800-MY-RESET. Call 1-888-789-7777. Visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut. Visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org. Call 800-327-5050 in Massachusetts. Call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY. Text HOPE-NY in New York. Whew. All right. AFC South. So what do we got for the Houston Texans?
When we look at the Texans, well, one is actually going to be interested to see if your boy Tank Dell comes back and how he does, because there's a guy that I feel bad for. He's had
brutal.
So many injuries. I mean, he had dislocated knee, patella, torn ACL, LCL, MCL.
It was
everything.
a shredded knee. I mean, it was the sort of worst case scenario of that looks horrendous, and it is horrendous.
Yep. And a dislocated kneecap on that. I mean, it was bad.
It was the type of knee injury that used to be just the career killer. Like you're never coming back from that.
Yep.
Is there any hope for have we reached a stage of medical advancement where that there's reason to think that Tank Dell can come back 100%, or is that still likely a career killer and he's just never going to be the same?
I don't like to be negative,
Sure.
but I kind of put him like I was talking about with Tyreek Hill. I think this could be a very detrimental injury to his career.
Right. He's obviously got the benefit of being a lot younger than Tyreek Hill.
Yep.
So the sort of the elasticity of youth that we keep mentioning is at least on his side, but the injury was such a devastating one.
Yep. Now, he is going to be an example for recovering from something like this as a wide receiver at that age. He is going to be a good example of what you can do because his body, prime age to recover. Surgery was complex, yet it sounds like it went okay. So I am just very interested to see what he does. He's going into a very competitive wide receiver group also. So it will just be, I'll be very interested to see how he can perform, and you'll know right away if he just can't cut the same.
Right.
So
does the opposite of the Quinshon Judkins thing, does the fact that he's 165 pounds help him because he's not carrying 220 pounds putting it through that knee?
I would say the biggest thing that doesn't help him in this situation is the way he plays. He's shifty, cuts fast.
Yeah.
He relies on that knee to plant on a sudden burst, and I don't know if he's going to be able to do that. That's going to be the big question, and you'll be able to even see that when he starts playing in preseason. You'll be able to tell if he's actually explosive or not. So,
has he just been unlucky, or so? Like you've seen pictures of him, his knee, his legs. I don't think I've ever seen anybody who has thinner legs than him. Like it's insane. His legs are the size of like normal people's arms.
Yeah.
That has to be a risk when it comes to, surely, could we get some squats or, some kind of leg strengthening involved here? Or is he just like small guy in the wrong place at the wrong time and it was inevitable?
I mean, when he broke his leg, that was inevitable.
Right.
But I don't think his muscle density would have affected that. But, I mean, anybody who doesn't have the adequate strength around their knee is going to be more vulnerable to an injury like that. And he probably, I'm not saying that he doesn't work out. He works out plenty.
Of course,
right?
yeah.
It's a guy who relies on his speed and shiftiness. So, it will be very interesting to see how his body handles this. Obviously, he's been doing tons of rehab on that side, so we'll see how he comes out.
Brutal. Yeah, I mean, I love that guy as a player. I would love to see him come back, but it did seem like the kind of injury where when it happened. I mean, Tyreek Hill's injury, you're like, okay, that could be a career ender in large part because he's like 31, 32 years old, and that's the age where, receivers start to decline anyway. You put those two together, and you're like, well, yeah, fair. Tank Dell, you're like, that could be a career ender just because it's such a horrible injury, and that sucks for a guy as talented as he is, but also as young as he is.
Yep, absolutely.
Anyone else in the Texans we need to spend some time on?
Not really, no. I think we got that.
All right, so the Indianapolis Colts, now we get the Daniel Jones thing. We touched on this a bit already in terms of the Achilles injury, he may be the sort of, I mean, Deshaun Watson's complicated by the fact that he did back-to-back Achilles injuries. It's more, but Jones is like the first guy in his 20s coming off I don't want to say routine Achilles injury, but like a non-complicated, just you popped your Achilles, you're 29, let's see how the recovery is. Now and the guy who uses his legs a lot. So I think this will be a really interesting one to see. Can you actually return from an Achilles, even with a longer than, fast-tracked kind of time scale, and just be the player you were before you left? Or is the first year back from an Achilles injury, even when you're 29, a write-off effectively?
Yeah, it's not, it doesn't look good for him to be able to be as productive as he was. I think the big question for Daniel Jones, honestly, is can he play as high and efficiently when he knows he can't rely on his run game as much? He's just not going to scramble as much. He's not going to be able to drive off. His explosive capacity after an Achilles, no matter what type of surgery you get, your explosive capacity goes down. So he's not going to be able to take off or have that burst like he used to. So he's going to have to rely on his arm more, and it'll be very interesting.
And is that because of the Achilles or because of what you mentioned before, which is the sort of the reduction in power in your calf? Is it the calf thing that becomes the limiting factor, or the fact that your Achilles has lost strength or the ability to take that force when you tear it?
A little of both. I would say another big factor in that, though, is apprehension.
Right.
I see it with ACLs all the time too. If I have a patient who tore their ACL, one of the biggest things that we overcome is just them trusting it.
Yeah.
So that will also be a big factor for him.
Because Cousins in particular, you could see, he lost all ability to drive the ball, and he had no ability to move around anymore either. He was never, it's not like Cousins was ever a scrambling weapon, but even with him, the difference between pre and post was pretty stark.
Absolutely.
And that's a guy that didn't rely on his legs.
Yep.
Daniel Jones is a rushing threat. If he can't do that at all and has lost power on the top end of his throw because he can't, drive off that leg, it makes him a lot worse. And B, it makes the Colts' decision to give him the contract really interesting.
Yep.
That was always an interesting thing to me, that you had this guy that was working off a pretty small sample size anyway in terms of high-level play, and it just had the kind of injury that meant next year might not be that, even if he was going to pick up where he left off in terms of that level of play, he might not be able to for a year. And you're still willing to give him that kind of contract was pretty fascinating.
Yeah, it would be, especially his first couple games back, will be very interesting to see just how much he trusts that calf.
Yeah.
So.
Anybody else on the Colts that we need to talk about?
Not really. Nothing too big to touch on there.
Alec Pierce is dealing with something, right? Did I see that?
Alec Pierce is dealing with a foot/ankle.
Yeah.
They haven't really talked too much about it. It sounds like it's a little bit more of a chronic issue, that he's just dealing with either pain or discomfort. I'm a little worried about that just because of having an off season. So when you see somebody who has more concern pop up, especially going into training camp with the things that they were dealing with in the off season, you tend to say they were doing something conservative, like were they doing peptides, red light, whatever conservative approach they were doing, and is that working? Because as soon as they start to really go hard and run drills and do all of that stuff and it's not feeling better, then that brings up concern. It's well, now what's the intervention going to be?
Yeah.
So I'll keep a close eye on what Alec Pierce has happened.
Theoretically, everybody that's not dealing with, some sort of major surgery is targeting training camp, right? For this is go day, right? So if you're reaching training camp and you're not go, something hasn't worked the way it was supposed to.
Correct. Yep. So that's a big sign. You could replace Alec Pierce with a number of players who you hear when they go into training camp, they're sitting out, they're hurt.
Right.
It's probably because whatever conservative approach they were doing was not as beneficial as they thought.
How many of those, so there's that, obviously, that ilk of injury, but there's probably, how many injuries also, it's basically just the first time you start doing serious stuff is when something goes. You came back, it was the first time you did real high intensity stuff and the hamstring went, oh, no, not happy about that. And that's, so you must get a spate of injuries that show up just from sort of being the first intense work people did.
Yeah, you see there's two time periods when injuries occur the most. Starting, especially if somebody's not warmed up or if they haven't done it before, so at the beginning, and then at the very end when they're tired.
Right.
Like a good example is the number one time for people to hurt their hamstrings is in the fourth quarter. So you see that a lot. You see just time play a big factor in it, whether it's based off of the fatigue at the end or if it's that they weren't warmed up or they weren't ready to start.
The fatigue thing, why is that? Because being able to execute anything when you're fatigued is problematic, right? And that's, you hear sort of part of what separates great players is somehow the ability to still still execute things at a high level even when you're fatigued and blah, blah, blah. Is it like a physiological thing, or is it that when you're tired, you just become less in control of your body and that's what pulls something?
Yeah, physiologically, actually, what happens is you don't have the stability muscles around it giving you as much support, and the muscle contraction actually isn't as much. So you basically don't have as much pull from one given muscle the way it should. Okay, it's like it's not firing on all cylinders.
Right.
So the muscles around it are tired, they're not stabilizing, and that given muscle itself that's being 100% recruited is just not able to give you 100%.
Okay, that makes sense. All right, what about Jacksonville?
So Travis Hunter is, I think, a big one.
Yeah.
And so I think that for Travis Hunter, my biggest concern is he going to be able to come off an LCL injury where he's planting and driving off that outside of that leg? I don't. One of it's going to be, how do you think they're going to use him this year?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think there's sort of two conversations with Travis Hunter. There's, just is his knee injury any kind of concern coming off it? What are we dealing with in terms of health coming into the season? And then there's the bigger picture, more existential question of, is this two-way workload something that's actually sustainable at the NFL level? So let's cover the sort of the base knee injury thing first, and then get big picture.
So LCL outside of your knee, when you have an LCL injury, especially a tear, it's the cutting laterally. It's a side shift in weight that takes all of that pressure. So that's a huge part of his game.
Sure.
I mean, huge part of his game. So when it's a non-contact too, it was at practice, I believe, when that happened, and that was back in October. So he's had some time to recover, but at the same time, he relies so much on that lateral shift that if that is not 100%, you're going to see a big decline in his mobility. You're going to see a big decline in his shiftiness. It's not as bad, obviously, as when it's coupled with an ACL because he's able to weight bear sooner and he's able to recover a lot faster. But at the same time, it's a very significant injury. You'd rather have the MCL than the LCL. And for a player like that and a wide receiver and running back that have LCL injuries, they tend to be more vulnerable to injure their knee again. And that's just because of the force that they put on the outside.
Because it was so long ago, and it's not. I mean, I think the only ligament in your knee that people people fear is the ACL, and even that one seems to be, again, I don't want to use the term routine, but routine. Yeah. But I guess there actually is the reason to think that his LCL will be anything other than 100% coming into the season.
I wouldn't think that it's going to detriment him too much. I think he's been doing the appropriate rehab, and he has been obviously playing and stuff like that. So it's not like he's going to test it out for the first time when he steps
Right.
on a football field. So it's just going to be interesting to see how much he can shift and move and rely on that lateral force of that knee. And it's obviously going to be apparent when he just starts to cut and play wide receiver. But then what you're talking about is when you load him on both sides of the ball, how does that knee hold up?
So then, yeah, even going beyond the specifics of the knee, do you have a take from your perspective about just how possible it is to try and be basically a full-time two-way player at the NFL level? Mm-hmm. And I guess, so number one, do you have a take on that? Number two, again, does his size play into that at all? Like if he was a 220-pound guy, would we feel more confident about it, or is that irrelevant?
I think from a physical standpoint, playing both sides of the ball just greatly increases your risk of injury, just from the fact that, like, more contact, more plays, everything like that.
Just in terms of, like, just the maths of your basically you're exposing yourself to routine injury twice as much,
Yep.
right? In fact, like nothing beyond that for the moment. Like you're literally just doubling the amount of snaps that you are exposed to injury. Therefore, you are twice as likely to get injured.
Correct.
Is there then like a further compounding effect of now you're in the red zone of injury risk, that fatigue you talked about. You're now there 75% of the time.
Yep, that's part of it too.
Right.
Is how soon do you get to a point where you're compensating, you're not throwing everything you have into a tackle, whatever that might be. But then there's always that rule about just guy's a freak athlete, like you have the Deion Sanders and the Travis Hunters. I mean, you have these guys that you're just like, they're freaks.
Yeah.
And the way that they can play football is better than 99% of people, and the way they can handle it. So I think for him, the smartest thing would be to see how he does on one side of the ball and see how he handles it. And if you think physically he's doing okay, then you can expose him to the other side. That's what I would do.
It would be, I wonder if they ever ran the math in terms of just the average player at corner, the average player at receiver, double that, because you're asking him to do both. Like, how often do those guys get injured and miss time, period? Because at this point, the cost-benefit analysis on Travis Hunter is almost becoming, how often is he going to be on the field, right? Mm-hmm. Because now the biggest negative actually is when he goes down, you're losing two players, not one, right? And that's obviously huge at two very important positions. So the equation almost becomes like, just how likely is he to miss time ever, right? And that almost becomes the question of whether it's worth playing him both sides of the ball. It's not, can he do it? Will he be good at both? It's just simply like, how likely is he now to be missing for a given game at a given point in the season? If it's beyond a certain number, it's just not worth the risk.
Yeah, that's a great perspective. I mean, to think about somebody going down like that, you're losing two positions then, essentially. So there is a huge risk there. It'd be very interesting to see, especially maybe for his style of play, what's better for his body. The other one is everybody in the NFL is all of a sudden getting super, super jacked in one offseason.
Yeah.
He's one of those guys that name popped up, is like putting on all this muscle and stuff. Maybe there's something to that too, but I guess we'll see once they get into camp.
In terms of a potential negative or a positive?
I'd say positive.
Yeah.
I'd say positive. It's more muscle, and the stronger you are, the more you can hold up against other elite athletes.
Is there any risk to doing that too fast? Like, is there a world where you can put on 20 pounds of muscle in a fairly short period of time and that's not healthy? Not healthy is the wrong term. That's potentially structurally a problem for your body.
Yes, there's detriment to adding muscle too fast because your tendons don't adapt.
Right.
That doesn't really happen naturally all that often. I mean, somebody who maybe goes from never lifting to lifting. So with these athletes, when they're putting on mass and muscle mass, yeah, they're gaining weight, but they're also gaining weight through, eating more and all of that kind of stuff. So I wouldn't be too worried about that.
We talked before about the old David Boston story, right? Where somebody was like writing an honest to goodness story about how David, I forget what the number was, it was like 39 pounds of muscle or something in an off season. And they were like, yeah, he just started eating fish and, lifting some weights and and then, curiously enough, David Boston ends up getting popped for PEDs somewhere down the line. It's like, maybe you could have seen that coming, right?
That's a lot of tuna.
Is there a number? Is there a number that you would see guys put on X pounds in an off season? You'd be like, I don't know how possible that is without, some certain Mexican supplements, let's say.
Yeah. I would say, you go over 20 pounds of muscle.
Yeah.
You're sitting there like, that's a pretty large amount of muscle.
Like, that's not possible without some stuff that you're not allowed to have,
Yeah. And like I said, I mean, you have the people that might not exercise and lift that much. They could probably put on muscle mass pretty fast. But for guys that are elite athletes like this, that always work out anyway. That'd be a big change.
Almost basically nobody is reaching. Maybe year one, year two from a small school where they don't have a great weight program, whatever. Right. But if you've come from anywhere, even if it's the first year as a professional program, you're not going from nothing to something.
Right.
You've been doing some workout in the gym already.
Yep. Yeah.
All right, what about the Tennessee Titans?
All right, so Titans have an interesting – one thing about the Titans that is actually going to be really interesting too is with a coaching regime, they're used to playing super, super physical. Have you noticed that the Titans are yearly the most injured team?
No.
So over the past 5 years, the Titans have had the most injured players of any NFL team. And that's collectively, not year by year. But there's something called an AGL. It's adjusted game loss.
Yeah.
And it measures starters and core players, basically a certain percentage of snaps, players that miss, okay? And they combine all of that, and the amount of games that that team has players miss makes up an AGL. And in the last 5 years, the Titans were number one. So it was Titans, Saints, 49ers, Cardinals, and Lions. They tend to just be more injured. Now, luckily, going into this year, because that you could always attribute that to anything, physical practices, whatever that might be, strength and conditioning. This year, honestly, it's just more about Jeffrey Simmons. So he has had UCL and elbow concerns in the past, but he just had a big UCL injury, which is the inside of your elbow. But as a D tackle, you have to think about the amount that you're extending your arm, you're pushing away, and the force that's getting applied to the inside of that. So it will be interesting to see how that holds up because the UCL injuries aren't as common in NFL. But for him, that's a significant injury just by the amount of force that you have to use on your arms.
It's usually it's the throwing injury, right? Like the baseball, and then Josh Allen had the UCL. Like you don't hear about it at other positions.
Yep. The Tommy John.
Yeah.
Right.
And for quarterbacks, it tends to be like your arm got hit as you were throwing, and it's stressed. Like it's stressed the inside of your elbow as you were trying to throw because somebody got a hand on you or whatever. Like that tends to be the mechanism for quarterbacks. You don't hear about it for other positions.
Yeah, and the hard part for me is differentiating. Like a UCL injury is really unique in the sense of it is relied on so much on like what the position is, right? And like what type of force goes through the UCL. So an example would be a D lineman or an O lineman constantly are relying on their elbow and that UCL versus a wide receiver. Doesn't necessarily have to use it that much unless they're like blocking on a run. So I'll just see how that holds up. And when he definitely can engage and use that elbow, you'll find out how his elbow is doing. Obviously, it's not one of those though that you commonly see that it starts to be sore and then it lingers and it tears again. It should be good to go. UCL injuries are actually pretty good as far as a healing process.
Moving on to the Denver Broncos, obviously Bo Nix is the biggest topic of discussion here. Mm-hmm. What was the story with his ankle? Because it was weird, right? That he came out of that game, he was bouncing around celebrating, and then it's like, oh, by the way, Bo Nix is done. It was a really strange way that came out. And then the sort of added little bits and pieces that we got from Sean Payton largely were also kind of interesting as well, where they were like, it was going to go at some point. There was something already on its way out or damaged in his ankle, and it was just a ticking time bomb, and eventually it went, but now surgery. And what was the deal to begin with, and are we expecting him to just be 100% now?
I do not expect Bo Nix to be back to 100% at all.
Oh.
If you actually look at his history, he's had ankle issues on that same ankle in the past. He actually had the same surgeon that Joe Burrow used for his ankle. Bo Nix is kind of interesting because when you had that like weird interaction with him and Sean Payton, I think Sean Payton was alluding to like his history of ankle stuff. And Bo Nix took it personally as like, well, I'm going to be fine with this one. And in all reality, the more ankle issues you have, the more likely they're going to cause big-term issues.
But this was weird because it was a break, right?
Yes.
It wasn't just, he's had an ankle, he's had a history, like the stuff we talked about before, the instability, you sprain an ankle, now you sprain it worse, now you tear a ligament, blah, blah, blah. He broke something in it.
Yep. I'm actually not as worried about fractures.
Right.
So generally speaking, when you have a fracture, it's healed and then your bone heals and you're not going to break that spot again. But when you have an ankle break, you're really damaging the ligaments on that. So let's just call this a super, super severe high ankle sprain, and he broke his ankle.
Okay.
Right? the interesting thing, it didn't really look like that
Yeah.
when it happened, right?
Looked
It didn't,
fine.
It didn't look like that, but it doesn't mean that he didn't stress those ligaments. So right now, his recovery process is basically bone healed, ligaments are not inflamed anymore, ankle stability has to be treated just like a high ankle sprain, and he's really working through trying to create enough security around that this doesn't happen again. But he is 25% plus more likely to injure that ankle again this year, the first year back.
Is there anything that players like that can do in terms of, like, can you when offensive line, I mean, there are a lot of offensive linemen that just as a matter of course wear knee braces, but, certainly if you've injured a knee, you come back, you wear a brace, even if it's just for a period of time. Is there anything you can do for an ankle when you've had that injury? You presumably got some long-term instability. Like, are there ankle braces? Like, are there things that they can strap that ankle solid to try and minimize that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously they can tape it up, but the other one is lateral ankle stability, so supports that basically have a bar that go up that ankle like to mid-calf. Those are really common. And then we talked about this a little bit, but some players are even electing to do this tightrope surgery, which is really cool. It's basically it's reinforcing the lateral ligaments of your ankle. So your ankle has something called a deltoid ligament, which is basically like a fan that comes on the outside. And when that gets injured, those tend to be the ones that like flare and pull. And so what they do is they do a tightrope surgery where they basically bind it down on the lateral ankle, and it gives you way more security. That is something that I would look into if he's really concerned about this happening again. Maybe you hear about it. Maybe if week 3, week 4, he's starting to have ankle issues or he hurts himself again, that might be something he elects to do.
Okay. Yeah, that's kind of interesting. Anyone else on the Broncos?
Not really, no.
All right, next up, Kansas City with Patrick Mahomes coming back from injury.
Yeah, I mean, that's the big one. He is the most polarizing ACL injury that I've seen in a long time because of how he plays the game. I'll tell you right now. So he had an LCL and ACL. Okay, having the LCL adds a little bit worse injury, but it's not like adding a meniscus to an ACL. So he had surgery the next day. He was ready. He was on it. And normally they don't do that because
I was going to say,
swelling.
which is unusual, right? It usually is a few days at least before you get surgery.
Right. Tells you kind of about the character, I think, too. The guy just wants, like, let's do it. Let's get it done. And if he had a surgeon that was opting to do that, great.
Is that bad, though? Like, if the standard is you wait a few days for the swelling and you're not, either it means there was no swelling or it means you're pushing something that most people don't.
Yeah, the less swelling reduces risk of infection, and it lets your body naturally heal and settle into place, especially if imaging was kind of disrupted by the fluid. A good example is Max Crosby had to wait a few days after his knee injury when he had surgery. I would say this. I think as of now, the surgeon wouldn't have done that if they weren't confident. So,
sure.
And he's recovering fine. There was a viral clip of him golfing and swinging a golf club, but I would say...
Teams must love, by the way.
Thanks.
He's out here trying to recover from any injury. He's busy twisting, playing golf like that. I can't feel great about that.
Can't feel great about it. But he is not going to be 100% week 1.
Yeah.
I think he will play week 1.
Sure.
I think he will continue to just slowly progress in his confidence in that knee, but he's not going to be a scrambler. He's going to be a pocket passer for those first couple weeks, but I think he's going to be back. If I had to bet on it, I think he plays week 1, and I think it's just limited. The hardest thing I think in sports right now is like when players say, I'm not 100%, what percent are you?
Yeah.
Then does that mean that he's going to be 100% by week 3 if he wasn't by 1? Probably not, because then you're in the middle of the season. So it's just going to be something that they're going to have to deal with as the season progresses and then as he gets more confident.
I think he's already shown in the past that he's willing to go out there and play around injuries to a degree that most players aren't. I do wonder if the team would ever take that out of his hands and say, appreciate you want to be out here. Having said that, the best thing for all of us is for you not to be playing for the first couple of weeks. We'll let the backup take it from here. We're going to manage this timeline, not you. If it's up to Mahomes, I'm sure you're right. He would play week 1 and he'll play around it and just figure it out from there.
Yeah, and he has to also think about like the long-term future for himself and then the season future for the Chiefs, right?
Right.
They're a playoff team. How far of a deep run do they want to make? Are you going to risk yourself, right? Like a good example too is after an ACL, you have a higher chance of straining your hamstring, right? Because that's a big stabilizing muscle that's trying to protect your knee. So like just those little things, like I could definitely see them say, hey, we're fine if we go, 2-2 those first 4 weeks. You come back week 5. So
there's some questions, concerns for the wide receiver room for Kansas City as well. Mm-hmm. Obviously, Rashee Rice has that knee injury that he was trying to rehab in jail, which can't have helped. Mm-hmm. And then you've got Xavier Worthy with the shoulder that he injured. Was it week 1? One of the first plays where he ran into Travis Kelce and was basically never the same from that point on. So talk about Rashee Rice first. What are we dealing with, and how much of a problem is it that he was trying to do rehab in a prison cell?
I can't tell you how many research articles I've read on the success rate of prison rehab, but
he did have a plan, though. They let him put together a plan to rehab in jail.
So he had a torn LCL, PCL, and then he also had a hamstring tendon issue. When he hurt his knee and things tore, his hamstring tendon on the backside actually really, really strained. So that puts in another level of complication. But the bigger complication was in May, he had cleanup surgery. So there was scar tissue that developed, had cleanup surgery. Whenever that happens,
that's what the rehab was sort of off the back of, right?
Exactly. So you're basically dealing with a guy who had a second surgery to get some scar tissue out, who has to now rehab through that and just delay the progress. So, I mean, that's about a 2-month sideline when you have a cleanup surgery like that. So his jail probation issue is also going to limit his rehab, right? So I can't sit there and say I feel fully confident in when his return is going to be because I don't know how far along he is, and I don't know how he's feeling.
I mean, even just that standard timeline of May, 2 months, like we're into training camp at that point. I mean, we may be targeting like week 1 for a serious return from him as opposed to preseason.
Yeah. And with that, how much actual game-like action is he getting in his rehab right now? It could be very delayed for him. I mean, if he starts on the PUP or something like that, I wouldn't be surprised. But then when you go to like a Xavier Worthy, I think he's going to be okay. But I mean, do you remember that hit was gnarly?
Yeah.
When he and
worst scenario as well in terms of like wildly undersized, fragile guy, like just ran into a brick wall. The dude who outweighs him by like 100 pounds.
Yeah, that was, and so what happened is that injured his labrum, which is the ring around the shoulder, right? So your labrum is in your hip and your shoulder, and it basically is just a capsule that the ball of the socket sits in. And when you damage that, especially as a wide receiver where you need all this shoulder movement, that rehab process can be hard. Sounds like he's on track. He's had plenty of time to recover. The only thing that I fear that would cause this to take a step back is like another freak collision like that, or landing on it wrong, or diving for a ball outstretched arms.
But it's another, this Kansas City offense, the passing game, the receiver group generally, it's been in flux, and they haven't been able to nail down, like, this is the group, this is the dynamic for a few years now. And again, for a variety of reasons, you're not going to have that going into the season. You've got Mahomes coming back off his injury. You've got Rashee Rice maybe not in the lineup until the go date of week 1. You've got Worthy on his way back. Like, again, this group is not, this is the set group. This is how we're going to do this. We're going to practice throughout training camp and install it the way it's going to be. It's another year where this group is a little bit up in the air.
Yeah. I mean, it's a little bit disheveled right now, and then you're adding a new running back to the mix and everything. I think it'll be very interesting to see how they all come together.
All right, the Las Vegas Raiders, two really interesting players to talk about. You've got the Max Crosby deal with his trade being rescinded effectively. And then Jermod McCoy, the rookie who we talked about all the way through the draft, of a guy who was a top 15 talent in this draft maybe, who ends up going at the top of round 4 because of his injury issue. So let's start with the Crosby thing. The kind of the analysis was effectively everyone expects him to be fine this year, but it's a long-term future problem of how long is Max Crosby's knee going to hold up?
Yep. So when you have meniscus injuries, a lot of times you see the words repair, trim, those kind of things, when you see a trim, you know they basically shaved it down, right? When you shave down,
that's something that doesn't grow back, right? So when you shave it down, you are effectively reducing the amount of meniscus there, which is a permanent, like that's now you have less meniscus going forward forever. And eventually, like, if you have to keep doing that, you end up like you don't have enough meniscus.
Yeah, and
now you're bone on bone. Now that's a major problem.
Right, arthritis,
Yeah.
and they call it long-term cartilage risk, basically long-term wear and tear on that cartilage. Honestly, I think with like Baltimore and everything that happened there was some truth behind this being a risk factor. I don't know how much.
Yeah.
But you even saw pictures of him with his knee just swelling up like a balloon.
Well, that was one I was going to ask whether, I mean, has he basically exacerbated this problem by the Iron Man approach of I'm just going to play next week? Like he kept posting these pictures, like he had a knee injury, and he's posting these Instagram pictures of like midweek and his knee's the size of a bus, and then he plays the next week. Like that can't be doing you any good.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I think that he was toughing it out, playing on a bum knee until he could not run anymore.
And then they basically shut him down. Even he was like, I want to keep playing. They were like, dude, the season's gone.
It's done.
Shut it down. Like, what are you doing?
And then, therefore, the meniscus trim, which basically means that, like, he had a ton of fraying on the top of his meniscus, which is causing the swelling. So do I think that he's going to be impacted short term? No. Do I think long term? Yes, that's probably what scared away a longer contract.
And what does that look like long term? So they're concerned for next year, the year beyond. What is going to manifest in that time?
I think this year is going to be a good indicator of that. I think the way that he responds this year, not only just his play and performance, but like seeing and hearing about that knee. If it's hush hush and you don't hear about anything, I wouldn't be surprised if he's 3-4 years and he's good. If it's causing problems now, even after the trim, I think that there's a big risk factor for him not making another few years.
And it would be the same sort of thing in terms of dealing with swelling, drains, that kind of thing.
Yep.
Like that's what we're gonna. If something shows up, that's what it's gonna be. It's like it just doesn't stay quiet week to week.
Yep, most likely. Yeah, you just keep on seeing the Instagram photos of it.
All right, so talk about Jermon McCoy, because this went from coming off an ACL, he hasn't run yet, and then we expect him to come back, and then all of a sudden it sort of it went to being actually it's not we're not concerned about an ACL, we're now concerned about some sort of long-term chronic problem in his knee that could potentially torpedo his career. So what are we talking about with McCoy?
So his ACL surgery went well.
Right.
He everything at the report said that looked good, but what he had was called like a cartilage or a bone plug, and basically what that means is that they do a cartilage procedure because there wasn't enough space, and what happens with that is that you have like a sports-induced arthritis. He's going to have an arthritic knee. At what point? We don't know. He's not going to be able to tell you like, hey, I'm bone on bone right now because of this plug, but the reason that was put in was because there wasn't enough space in the beginning. So
space
between his bones.
Okay.
So when he had his ACL repair, they put this cartilage plug in, and that can cause swelling, that can cause extra damage too, especially if there's too much wear and tear on a high-end athlete. I would honestly say it's a coin flip on what he can do. I think that this bone plug is going to be a red flag for a lot of teams in the sense of you just don't know his timetable. When is it going to call it quits?
And there were reports that at some point they might have to go back in and either do that again or have another surgery that somehow addressed that. What would that be? So if the bone plug was to create more space between the bones or to enable them to do the ACL surgery in the first place?
It was to add cartilage. It's adding cushion.
Yeah.
So he was on a box spring. They put a mattress on it.
Right.
They will do another procedure if there's a ton of irritation around that, if they have to adjust the bone plug, or if they need to do some more work on his meniscus.
Space.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
it's not necessarily an indication that the first one didn't work. It's more of a, well, I know it is. But it's not that the bone plug itself didn't take or didn't, wasn't. It was just that it's a bigger problem than the one bone plug was able to patch up.
Yep, and I think where the concern definitely from like a ownership and coaching standpoint is how long will he last?
Yeah.
We don't really have a good indication for this.
And the reports were like, if they have to go in and do that surgery again, that's a year.
Yep.
So that on its own is, okay, that wipes out a year. And then we have the added concern of we don't know we don't know how long it lasts, period.
Yep.
And that's even if that is successful.
Yeah. So he was drafted with the potential of being redshirted, basically. Right. Yeah.
Is there any kind of history that you know of guys that have had that surgery and then it's resolved, right? There's now enough space in the knee. We're all good. Not
entirely, because everybody's different with that. But also, when you get these plugs, it's oftentimes based off the position, off of what they do, how much stress they put on their knee. This is a very big case study of just individual people.
Right.
And he is obviously playing an athletic position. He plays outside. He's going to be using that knee a ton. He's not trying to rely on it from more of like an alignment stability standpoint. So odds are the wear is going to be higher, and odds are that it's going to give out sooner. But we just don't know. It's really hard to tell.
Is the ACL effectively, I mean, is that just an irrelevant incidental to this? Like it's basically not, it's not even a factor in what we're talking about here. It's just the thing that people knew he had to begin with. Or is that also complicating this?
ACL is not complicating it anymore. From everything that I read, the ACL is intact, looks great,
right.
Healing around that is good. It's the plug.
Yeah, yep. It's like it's basically a totally different knee question that nobody knew about before everybody got into this and he did the medicals and blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
Like the ACL is effectively irrelevant to what we're talking about here. That's, for all intents and purposes, he's recovered from that and all good. It's this degenerative thing that maybe is an indeterminate problem.
Yeah,
we don't know how big it is, how long it is, what the solution is going to be.
Yep. I mean, if it was just his ACL, I think we'd be talking about him a lot differently right now. So
talking about a first-round player, I think, at this point. Anybody else on the Raiders?
No, I think we're good.
Okay, what about the Chargers?
Chargers are an interesting team. They got three big names that I look at with three completely different injuries, all different risk factors. I'll start real quick with Ladd McConkey. Honestly, he has a hamstring injury. Mm-hmm. His big thing is he going to go? Is he going to re-aggravate it? But if he comes back too soon, it's about a 33% chance of re-injury, they say. So we'll see. But when you injure your hamstring, there's two things that determine your success on how bad it is. Is it musculotendinous, meaning it's like the further down as it's inserting by the knee, or is it in the meat of the muscle? If it's in the meat of the muscle, you heal faster. So we don't really know exactly where his was, but that kind of helps determine on his success rate and when he comes back. But I'm not too worried about it, but just know this is something to watch out for during the season.
Okay.
Joe Alt, okay, that's a whole different one. Joe Alt's ankle, obviously him and Rashawn Slater both had big injuries last year, really affected that offensive line. We've already talked about ankles and everything like that, but I think the one thing that you just want to know is a really bad ankle injury for an offensive lineman is so hard because at any given point you have 300 pounds of sudden pressure putting on it.
And a huge offensive lineman.
Yep.
I mean, he's a massive individual.
Yep. So he will be back, but he will have to know he's 100%. This is one of those where I'm like, man, that would be very difficult to return on a 50% bum ankle.
Right.
So I honestly think that he's going to be fine. He's going to be questionable going into week one. Don't be surprised if he's on the injury report a little bit, but I think he'll be able to start.
Yeah, I mean, he's the one I think that most people are just penciling in as he'll be back 100%, all good. Slater, I think, is the more interesting one to me because we had a listener at one point sort of throw at us the history of guys with patella injuries is pretty rough for offensive linemen. Now, complicated by the fact that Josh Simmons for the Chiefs is coming off one a year ago, and he was perfect. Like he was ahead of schedule, if anything, and looked great. But generally, the history of offensive linemen coming back with patella injuries is pretty bad.
Yep, his is much worse. And patellar tendon injuries.
Alt.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, then all, yep. Because patellar tendon injuries are very hard to recover from because it is basically pulled on every time you contract your quad. So every time you take a step, you stand, you go upstairs, that's pulled on. And it's not a common injury. It really isn't. It happens, but when it does happen, it's kind of one of those like, oh no, man, this is going to be a long recovery. And it's just because it is the one point that your quad pulls on every single time it contracts.
Right.
And then that tendon actually gets the most force of any ligament around the knee. That gets the most force when you shift your weight forward like this, when you actually lean forward, like if you're going to go into a forward lunge, right? Well, what do offensive linemen do a lot?
Any form of run blocking.
So it will be very interesting to see how he recovers. From what I hear, he's doing well. All reports say it's doing great. But then again, in the NFL, who doesn't have a good report
Yeah.
from surgery? So he's going to be another one that's questionable week 1. We'll see how he heals. There's just not a lot of history of really finding out how players can recover from this, especially from the O linemen, except for recency bias, right?
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like the overall history of these guys coming back, they just don't look the same.
Yeah.
Early, again, with the one complicating factor, the most recent one is Josh Simmons, who looked great, like right out of the box, if not ahead of schedule. So, it's a big unknown. Like the Chargers' offensive line on paper looks pretty solid potentially, but if Slater is not the player that he was before he went down, it might not be.
Yep. And then just another little thing about Slater is I don't know if there was any type of like avulsion fracture with it or bone disruption of his patella, which makes the healing just a little bit more delayed. But,
Right. All right, moving to the NFC, the Dallas Cowboys. Who we got here?
So the Cowboys are generally one of those teams that I mentioned before too. They kind of get injured a lot. So we got Dak obviously coming off his knee, but we don't really know what his rehab status is right now. Everything says that he looks pretty good and he's going to be good to go week 1. But he's had lower extremity injuries like crazy. His ankle in 2020, his knee injury, but apparently there was not major structural damage in it, but his knee injury, and then and honestly, like just his mobility in general of his lower extremity has decreased. I think that he's getting up there in age, like some of the other quarterbacks.
Yeah.
And so it'll be interesting to see how he comes off of that. But there's not like a public listing of like what he exactly had damage done. But all we know is that he's going to come out probably questionable week 1, but we'll see.
It's been pretty funny seeing the Dallas Stadium used in the World Cup where they actually put up the shades,
Oh.
It turns out you can prevent players getting blinded on the field, and Jerry just doesn't want to because it looks pretty.
Yep.
I think that's great. I wonder how much they're going to push to have that, because the most hilarious thing about that is that it seems to have affected his own team worse than the opposition. Like everyone's getting blinded by that stadium for a period of time, but it does seem that it's happened more to Cowboys players than to opposing players.
Right, like C.D. Lamb last year, just like put his hands up. He's like, I can't.
You just
see.
turn around, you're getting blinded by the sun streaming through the windows of the opposite end. Meanwhile, the World Cup's on in that stadium. They put giant curtains there.
Yep.
But Jerry apparently likes the effect of the dapple light on the field. So he's like,
It looks beautiful.
Your retinas are a sacrifice I'm willing to make. Anybody else for the Cowboys?
Just quickly touch on Chavon Revel. He obviously, as you probably remember, he tore his ACL in East Carolina.
Yeah.
So year 2 after ACL is when you really see the biggest bounce back. So productivity normally dips a little bit the year 1. Year 2 coming back, it will be really interesting to see. Everything looks promising for him, but I'm just going to keep an eye on how he plays and how much more he trusts that knee. So.
Next up, New York Giants. Some significant
yes.
people coming back from injuries here.
Well, I mean, why don't we start with the Giants with, let's go with...
We'll start with Malik Neighbors because, A, maybe the most important player they have, and B, that's another one of those ones that seems to have been more complicated than it was initially supposed to be.
I would say with New York Giants and Neighbors is my biggest concern as far as him being able to come back fully this year. So he had his ACL tear. He goes into surgery again. There's a delay from that surgery. He gets cleaned up again. And what they found is they found that there was cartilage that developed. It's called it's a Cyclops procedure. So this cartilage literally became a ball on the inside of his knee, and they had to go and take it out again. So that really delays him, because not only did he have that, but when you have that around a meniscus, you're non-weight bearing. So he's kind of one of those guys where I'm like, I don't know when he's going to be able to come back, because he'll be on the PUP list is my thought, but he's already going to have about a 25% drop in efficiency from an ACL injury as a wide receiver. And then you look at it and you're like, well, when somebody gets a cleanup like he did, the good news is he got a cleanup. Okay, you got your scar tissue. The bad news is when you do that, you're off again. You restart some of that rehab process, but then you go in and you have something like that, a Cyclops procedure. That is detrimental, and I do not see him coming back within the first 5 or 6 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't. I just have a feeling with his injury, just reading about it and the complications, you're hearing nothing good from Giants camp about it. I would be really surprised that if he comes back early on this, and if he does, it would be super interesting to see how powerful he is.
I've never heard of that type of complication. Is anytime you're screwing around with cartilage, is that a red flag for a long-term degenerative type problem, or are there now cartilage injuries where you can clean it up, you can take care of it, and it's fine going forward?
Meniscus is the one that's a concern for sure, because it's such a big cushion part for your knee. So I would say of the knee of all things, yes, that is more scary. I mean, when you're dealing with cartilage and things like a hip or a shoulder, it's a little bit easier just because you can shave it down a little bit, but it's a smooth ball and socket.
Okay.
Yeah, so for him, I mean, and he also, Neighbors had a meniscus repair on top of this, right? So his meniscus was hurt, which means he wasn't weight bearing. His ACL was torn, and then he had cleanup procedure, and he had this Cyclops. So there is a ton going on with his rehab process right now, but the biggest thing, he just can't bounce back now. It's delayed. It's been delayed.
But so the concern is more just a never-ending extension of the time scale, as opposed to the fact that he's had a meniscus repair, the fact that he's now had the Cyclops thing those are now concerning things in terms of just the overall health/damage of the knee. Like, we're now more concerned about how badly the knee was hurt, which is the bigger thing there, how badly we think this injury went, or the fact that it's just we keep pushing the timetable further and further out because of the complications.
Yeah, the ACL and meniscus, like you see that.
Right.
It's definitely the other complications. And it also just, you think about when that happens and you're delaying just his agility drills that he should be doing and all of the off-field conditioning stuff. Like, he is definitely in a vulnerable state when he comes back, because I don't think he's going to be at 100% peak performance. And I also know that he's going to be apprehensive with a knee injury.
Yeah.
There's a lot that goes into it.
Andrew Thomas, like all of their, unfortunately for the Giants, all of their injuries are at really important players, which is not ideal. Andrew Thomas, one of the best left tackles in the NFL when he's healthy, but has now got a reasonably extensive history of injuries.
Yep, and he has a Liz Frank, which is a midfoot injury. Those are high recurrence rate if you don't get it healed right. So meaning, like, people that bounce back from a Liz Frank injury, they tend to come back too soon and re-aggravate it. So he's going to be questionable week one. As a lineman, anything with, like we said, with an ankle foot where you're just getting all that force pushed on it, it's going to be hard. It's going to be a big test for him to see how well he does and how much that's healed up. But he's going to have foot soreness. We're going to be hearing about that for sure. He's going to have some soreness. He's going to have some tenderness around that area. It just depends on when he can get back.
Cam Scadaboo is somebody that I definitely wanted to mention, because, I mean, he's a guy that plays the game like, the Tasmanian devil, like a bowling ball. But that was a pretty brutal injury that he had. Is he going to be the same guy again when he comes back?
Scadaboo's hard, because completely non-medical biased opinion, he seems like the type that's just going to be fine. He just seems like the type that's like,
he's a maniac.
I'll be all right. Now, when he got hurt, he had a compound fracture, right? Which means that at his ankle, the bone was sticking out.
Came out.
Whenever you have a compound fracture, you have to have immediate surgery. He was not able to pick a surgeon. He wasn't able to do any of that. But from all sounds of it, it went okay. The thing that happened with that, though, is he tore every ligament in that
Along
ankle.
with it, yeah.
So when he did that, that's what he's recovering from. So with that rehab process, as we talked about with ankles, he is susceptible to have chronic ankle instability. He's susceptible to have this happen again, but he's also just one of those dudes that I'm like, I think he's just going to be ready. I don't know. Something in my gut is like, this guy will come out and be fine.
Well, he's also, like, you know, if you could convince yourself that any player would not overthink it, you know, it would be Scatterboo.
Yeah.
He's not going to be thinking about the fact that his ankle, you know, may collapse on him at any given moment. You know, it's not going to occur to him. He's just like, I'm fixed now. Let's go.
It's a boo-boo.
I wanted to mention Jackson Dart as well, because he had multiple concussions in a fairly short period of time, and is a guy that seems to play the game with a suicidal recklessness that cannot be helpful.
Yeah, he's one of those guys where I would want to just be a coach in a room with him and say, do you know the strongest predictor of a concussion? A previous concussion. Like, that is my concern with him. We've obviously seen it with Tua. I just think that for him, that will catch up. It will catch up fast. So he's got to alter the game. The way that they run him was surprising to me, to be honest, because I didn't really see that coming out of college. But the fact that they're doing it tells you something. So if he's got to learn, he's got to learn to get down. He's got to talk to Lamar Jackson a little bit and figure that out.
It's such a difficult line, I think, to walk, or a needle to thread for guys like that, where it's like, I mean, Daniel Jones, same. Like, guys that are, it's such an important part of what they do, but it's wildly risky. And for him in particular, anybody that, like for Josh Allen, right? Josh Allen's shown that he can do that, get away with it, and okay, he's going to get banged up and hurt, but he hasn't been badly hurt doing that enough for it to be a major problem. They're still going to sort of change the way that he plays as he ages and try and, you know, reduce the amount, but like fundamentally he's shown he can do that. With a guy like Jackson Dart, year one, you got injured multiple times in basically the same way. It's like, well, okay, it worked. Like, it was a really important part of your game, but you've already shown that it might not be viable. And now, so what do you do with that? Do you say, okay, you just got unlucky, you got concussed a couple of times, or do you say, you're in the same bucket as Anthony Richardson? Like, theoretically, you should be able to tap into all this running threat, but you've already shown that your body is simply not going to let that happen, so you're going to need to change the way you play.
Yeah, and that's going to be the biggest question mark is if he gets hurt one more time, if he gets another concussion, they have to have that conversation. They have to say, we got to change it up. We got to change the style.
Anyone else from the Giants we need to talk about?
No, not really. I mean, let's just keep an eye on Abdul Carter, just because when he came into the combine, he had the stress fracture in his foot.
Right.
But just keep an eye on that, because
Didn't surface year one, right?
Did not surface. So just an thought on, you know, if something like that lingers. So.
What about the Philadelphia Eagles?
Only one I really got for them is Jahad Campbell, but he's had some shoulder issues, rotator cuff labrum. It all signs pointed that he's going to be fine week one. If you have like a rotator cuff issue in a shoulder, or just even tenderness or soreness, it can linger for a while. For him as a linebacker, that's probably one of the biggest concerns, because you're just using your shoulder all the time to hit. But I'm not too worried about his return. I'm not too concerned about him even being able to suit up week one. So.
Nice. What about Washington? I think we have another quarterback question mark of Jaden Daniels. And some similar concerns to the Jackson Dart thing, in terms of like that man played the game like a crash test dummy coming out of college, and has now, like last year was sort of worst case scenario where, you know, guy who plays like that got injured for a while. It was, you know, it's been a problem. So you've got to at least be a little bit concerned by that.
Yeah, so if you guys remember, he dislocated his elbow, had a fracture in his elbow, really messed up the stabilizing ligaments around that.
That was like a weird, it was sort of going to ground, twisted in, right? did what Jordan Henderson did himself almost.
Yep,
Like,
the buckle.
yeah.
Yep. And so right now it's just about his throwing power and how he feels. So I would say this is he should be okay. He just goes in that bucket of, are you going to be an injury-prone player, or are you going to fall into the category of somebody who can perform and do pretty well?
And, how much of that is you, right? Like how much of that is the way you play? Can you try and have a little bit of self-preservation, even if you're going to be an injury-prone player? Like you might have to change the way you play to save yourself, right? Like, yeah, it's complicated because, like, even though statistically there's nothing to the idea that these smaller quarterbacks are more injury-prone, you still feel like any time a guy like Tua get like a defensive lineman grabs hold of him, you're like,
yeah.
Even if statistically it does, like guy Anthony Richardson, same thing, right? Anthony Richardson outweighs him by 50 pounds or whatever, and is just as likely to be snapped in half by the defensive lineman throwing him into the turf. But you still feel worse about the small guys.
Yep.
I mean, that's Jaden Daniels, right? He's built like a stick. It just feels like he's more likely to get injured, even if he's not.
Yep, kind of reminds me a little like RG3, and just like you got to take care of your body there, man. And this is not on a good trend for the start of his career.
No, again, particularly because it was something that people flagged coming into the NFL as a potential problem. It's already shown up as a problem in one season. You've got to be questioning whether it's going to be a thing going forward or not. Mm-hmm. Anyone else from Washington that's a major talking point?
Not too major, no, and not that I would say is worth diving too deep into.
All right, NFC North, Chicago Bears. What are our major concerns with the Bears?
So with the Bears, we have a couple key points, but I think one thing we need to remember too is they have a pretty interesting injury history as well. The Chicago Bears are one of the least injured teams. So I think that they do a pretty good job, at least handling their team as far as like off-season conditioning and strength and stuff like that. They do have an injury with their D-end, Dayo Obedingo. Yep.
I didn't check. Did the injury thing? Obviously, it's only 1 year of data, and that skews things. But did it change last year with Ben Johnson coming on board? Did it swing in a direction?
Well, they were not in the top 5. I know that. So I guess that's a good question. Is like, does that carry over from coach to coach? I'm sure that has a big part of it.
Yeah.
The opposite side is the Detroit Lions. Since Dan Campbell's taken over, the Detroit Lions have been in the top 10 most injured teams every single year. So I think there is a little bit of that. But they're routinely actually not too bad. But with Dayo, I mean, his biggest thing is his Achilles. We've talked about Achilles before.
Yeah.
He's going to be questionable week 1, but they're going to have to ramp him up and see how he plays. So.
All right. What about the aforementioned Detroit Lions?
Oh, baby. So I think, the Lions are always a laundry list of injuries, but I think the key one I want to talk about is Brian Branch. So he ruptured his Achilles in December, and I think everybody knew that when it happened.
Yeah.
But there was a video of him jogging around 6 months and looks pretty good. He's doing well on his recovery. The big thing is that jogging and doing well in recovery is a lot different than going full go. And so they cannot rush him back, especially if he's having calf soreness or anything like that.
It's such a hard, like, as much as the recovery timetable for Achilles seems to be quick, it does seem to, still ruin a player, at least for year 1. It sucks for a guy as good as Brian Branch. The other safety, Kirby Joseph, is also an injury concern. He's had multiple deals now.
Yeah, I mean, definitely with his left knee is giving him fits. So this is becoming a chronic issue with him. Right now, they're just basically saying like bone bruises, degeneration perhaps, because you get bone bruises when you do have that within a knee. But this is going to be something with Kirby Joseph that I almost guarantee you're going to have to just manage through the season. Once he starts playing, don't be surprised if he has to sit out or if he's hobbling around a little bit.
And then Sam Laporta, I think, is worth bringing up because his injury was a back injury, and that's always a scary one as well.
Well, especially when it's dealing with a fully herniated disc. So that's a significant injury. he has rehabbed well. Everything that I'm reading about is he's going good, and he's going to be ready for week 1. The risk, though, of this getting hurt again is higher, and it's not based off of like if Sam got hit in the back. It's his motion and the mechanism of injury. If he gets twisted up or if he gets a violent rotation hit, that's when he's going to be vulnerable to hurt this disc again. So really watch out for that. His rehab's been doing well. He's been doing okay, but this is something that I'd be concerned about just to make sure.
What is the sort of general solution to a herniated disc now? Because that used to be an injury that basically ended up with spinal fusion, right?
Depends on how much the herniation is. So a herniation doesn't necessarily mean it's
Fully,
out,
yeah.
right? The herniation means that we just have to kind of get it away from the nerves and centralize back between the vertebrae. It is normally a successful rehab process, but upon doing so, you're vulnerable in that area for that to happen again. And when it happens, you know very well. So for him, it's definitely more concerning about, okay, how strong do I feel around that area, and how much can that take as far as just like damage potential. So
let's move on to the Green Bay Packers, because their two biggest injury concerns, I think, are their two most important players from last year. You've got the Micah Parsons deal, and you've got Tucker Kraft on the offensive side of the ball. Parsons, I think, is interesting for a couple of reasons. Somebody had a report that the Packers, apparently as a team, have effectively a mandatory stand-down period of a full year 9 months. If you have if you've got a previous ACL injury in your past, right? So if you tear an ACL, if you've had an ACL before, 9 months. Like, you're not coming back sooner than that, no matter what the surgeon says, no matter what the recovery looks like. You are being stood down for 9 months. And obviously for Parsons, that's important because it was December when he injured his.
Right. Definitely, the Packers tend to lean towards that conservative team, very conservative medically. So they will do like the 9-month rule, I feel like, with him. But the other big thing is, if you remember how he tore his ACL, he was just rounding the edge, like when Bosa tore his, right? It was just coming off the edge, that velocity, that force. We really need to be careful with his rehab process anyway, because he's so explosive and he relies so much on that outside leverage that knee is going to take a ton more pressure. So they're going to be conservative. They're not going to rush him back because they can see what it was like without him. Right. If you just kind of look at the big picture, they fell apart without him. They want to make sure that he's healthy, 110% back. So they're going to try to make sure that he goes the full 9 months, and when he's ready, even if it takes another month, they're going to get him back.
That's the thing, and potentially even beyond the 9 months thing. And that's, start plotting out what that means. I mean, you might not see him for the first half of the season.
Yep.
And then Tucker Kraft on the offensive side, again, ACL for him, similar thing. When he went down, it changed the offense.
Completely changed the offense, and he was looking really good too. I mean, I think Tucker Kraft actually was having a very promising start to his career. The interesting thing is I'm not too worried about his return. I think he's going to be okay, but there was a really interesting stat that I read. There's only 3 tight ends at the age of 25 and under who have had a significant ACL injury that have came back to perform at that high level. And one was Brandon Pettigrew. Okay. One was the Gronk. Okay. And then the other one was the tight end for the Jags, Ingram, right?
Okay.
But Kraft, age on his side, recovery process on his side. Year 1 back, we're yet to see, because that is the one that they say the year 1 back is not helpful. So if he can go 1 year and he's performing at a high level, I am not concerned at all in the first 5 weeks. If he's going to be doing well there, he's going to be fine. The question is, because Green Bay is so conservative, do they slow play him in? But I think that he will be good to go just based off his age, his previous level of athleticism, and he should be all right.
Is that it for Green Bay, or is there anybody else we
pretty
need
much
to talk about?
that for Green Bay.
Minnesota Vikings. What do we got for the Vikings? Let me
Well,
start.
I mean, you got
Let me start. I think, again, two interesting players to them. Let me start with Darisaw, their left tackle, because he came back, and yet, even when he was back, they seem to be managing a problem there in a way that you don't tend to see for players coming back. Like, they were rotating him in and out of the lineup. It was like, you'll play this week, and then next week you're going to have to sit. Like, was that in any way normal, or does that indicate a much bigger problem for him?
He just was having constant swelling and tightness. They think they got him back too soon. I think that's concerning because now what's going to happen is you're delaying a full recovery.
Right.
Right. When you have something like this, when you have like an ACL, MCL, on his left side, you want that to be 100% fully recovered. If it's not, it's going to linger. And if it lingers throughout a season, you're just building inflammation on it, like a snowball effect. I think that they handled it a little poorly, where they should have just like let him completely heal. The biggest thing is if he comes back and he has any type of soreness, what are they going to do? Are they going to do it again?
And is that more likely now? Like, did that potentially cause a long-term problem, or did they just butcher his return last season? They should have had him out longer. They didn't. They kind of muddled their way through it. But now, with a full off season of recovery, blah blah blah, we should be good to go week one, no problems, no foul. Or did all that screwing around actually create a problem, and now he might have a long-term in and out of the lineup type of deal?
I think they dodged a bullet last year with him not getting hurt again.
Right.
I think now with this offseason of recovery, he'll be fine. But I think it would have been last year when you and I would have said that was dumb if he blew out his knee.
So. And I mean, to an extent, I understand it in that without him in the lineup, it was a catastrophe at tackle. So I understand the pressure of like, dude, we need to get Darisaw back in the lineup as soon as he can. But yeah, the second where it was like, actually, he needs to sit out again, that seemed like a massive red flag at the time.
Absolutely.
Speaking of massive red flags, the rookie, Caleb Banks, absolute monstrous human being, but has now dealt with multiple breaks in the same foot. I think up to 4. I mean, is that definitely going to be a long-term problem for him, or is that a case of it may have just been freaky, get him recovered, get him on, and we're good?
I'm concerned because mid-foot fractures and injuries, recurrent mid-foot fractures and injuries, in a 300-pound beastly of a man, that is very likely that he is going to be dealing with this in a chronic nature. Unless, I mean, they say that reports he looks good, but unless this was it just happened that it was 2 times. It happened that they found it at the combine. He wasn't really feeling anything, and it was like at the 99th percent of healing. I would just be concerned.
That part's crazy to me, though. Like so it means one of 2 things, right? It means either he wasn't feeling anything, and they just found something, with a scan buried in there that, may have been like a sort of Bo Nix deal, where it may have become a problem down the line, ticking time bomb type of deal, or it means that his baseline level of pain is so high that like he didn't notice that he had a broken foot. He just thought it was the regular foot soreness, right? It's like, no, that's broken. You're going to need to get that fixed.
Yeah, this hurts. Yeah.
Yeah, like that would be a lot more concerning, I think, if it was the dude is just used to dealing with baseline agony in his foot because he's broken it 3 or 4 times already.
Yeah, I got to say, if that's the case, man, he's one tough SOB.
Yeah.
But I mean, because this injury is really actually
because he was like he ran a 40 and he was good to go with everything else. And they're like, no, dude, you've got a break in your foot. You need to stop doing things.
Yeah. So I mean, it's going to go one of 2 ways. You're going to see this be a non-issue, and it just happened to get reported there, and he was on his way to healing, or it's becoming like a chronic thing. I think it's going to be one of the 2. You're going to see it plague him, and it's going to rear its ugly head, or we'll never hear about it again.
Right. Man, that's why we keep talking about him as one of the biggest boomer bust players in the draft. Not only is his play boomer bust, but you're also dealing about something like this, which is going to go either boom or bust.
Yep.
Wild gamble for them to take in the draft. Anyone else for the Vikings?
No, not too much. I think that, we just got to watch also JJ's knee. JJ McCarthy, 9, got his, it's supposed to be fully recovered from his meniscus, but we'll see what happens. He's going to be at a QB battle, and that knee better hold up.
NFC South, the Atlanta Falcons.
Yeah.
Who we got for the Falcons?
So the obvious one is obviously Penix, but with that, He tore his left ACL. We know already about ACLs. We know about the recovery. I think the big thing is if you tear your ACL as a quarterback, how does your mindset come back? How are you apprehensive? Do you feel confident in it? Do you feel like loading it? Also, what is his level of overcoming this now that he's in a QB battle? So is he going to push it back at all? He's limited in participation in OTAs, so I think he'll be fine. It's just going to be an interesting story to see how much he pushes it.
And he's a guy who's got, I mean, this is an extensive history of knee injuries now. Like how much is that a concern that a guy who's already got multiple ACL injuries in his past has now got an ACL again? Like, are we talking about, again, it's sort of unlucky versus this is just a structural problem in your knees? Like how likely is he to just have bum knees?
This is one where I would say because his 2 previous ACL injuries were actually on his other knee, on his right ACL, I feel a little bit better about his recovery process with this, but you actually are more likely to tear your other ACL after you tear the first one. So if I tear my left, I'm more likely to tear my right. I think that he's going to be recovering from this like he just recovered from the other ones. But you can't sit there and say, here's a guy who's had 3 ACL tears, and he's not going to have some other damage going on in that knee. It's just inevitable. So will it detriment him to the point of where he's not able to move? I don't think so. Will it affect his mobility? I'm sure it will.
Right. Anyone else for the Falcons?
Watch Drake London's knee. It's just, I think it's going to be fine, but he's one of those guys that you really want to be full go when it comes to camp. So he had a knee injury late in 2025, but maybe more of like an MCL sprain. But they didn't want to call it a torn structure per se. So we'll just see kind of how he bounces back.
Semantics on the injuries.
Mm-hmm.
All right, the Carolina Panthers are next up, right?
Yeah. The one that's interesting is just Tet McMillan and his ankle. We've talked about the ankle instabilities and the importance of that, but I think that he's somebody who you look at and he just plays the game a little differently. So he's a bigger body. He's going to probably rely a little bit more on his ankle, just more also for the stability standpoint, but he's not like a shifty, small, quick receiver. So they're going to say he's questionable week 1, but he'll be cutting and doing drills and stuff like that in the offseason.
They have a couple of other guys that I think are interesting. Obviously, you've got J.C. Horn, who's now in this category of guys who, is he just wildly injury prone, or has he been crazy unlucky for the first while of his career? He got paid the massive contract and still picked up another injury. That can't be great for them.
Yeah. He also he's one of those concussion guys. And anytime on a defensive player you see that, you think that you're more vulnerable again. So I'll be
a big physical corner as well.
Yep, and he has to do the obviously clearance protocol symptoms. Anytime concussion, anytime neck, you got to be cleared. But obviously in the offseason, he's going to be fine. It's just going to be coming back week 1, seeing how he plays. So
they had Ike Ekwonu at left tackle had that injury. The fact that they both drafted and added, so Rasheed Walker in free agency and then drafted Monroe Freeling, has to sort of indicate that that's probably going to linger for a while.
Mm-hmm. Especially because when you see security blankets put in there, you kind of expect that there's going to be more maintenance or damage that was originally reported. The one thing that the NFL does a terrible job of is giving you honest reports about just like how progress is going. Everything is doing well, healing well, running fine. But they actually don't. You have to read between the lines. So like when you see a team who gets, other players to sub in, or that people are going to be plug and play, that that's probably an indicator of this player's not healing as well.
It made sense from his perspective in terms of how late into the season it happened as well.
True.
The other one I think that is interesting is Jonathan Brooks, running back, coming back again off multiple knee injuries.
Yep.
But this is probably just a case of it's July, it's sort of hype season, but all the reports around him seem to actually be pretty positive at the moment. Like you initially think, young guy coming off back-to-back ACL injuries at running back. It's almost game over before it's even begun. But actually, the the sort of direction of travel seems to be positive for him.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny because he has had 2 ACLs on the same knee.
Yeah.
And everybody said he's looking good. Now, how much of this is hype from
Right.
him coming out and having to be a bigger prospect? I think the thing is that we will definitely see him put this to the test because he has something to prove. He has a lot of hype around him. But when you have back-to-back ACL tears on that right knee, there is no way that knee is as stable as his left because you're working through these tears just to rehab, not to get stronger. Right? Unless you're like a freak like Nick Chubb, who you just see like squatting 600 pounds like months after something like that, you're not going to be able to have the same amount of strength and explosion in that knee. Will he still be productive? I'm sure, but I would just be very interested to see if you just see him have a low ceiling from this.
Yeah, and even like there's so many, it's so difficult to kind of quantify. There are so many guys that probably look good in practice or whatever, but then they get back on the field and it's just not the same. Like it might be difficult to see from the eye test point of view, but as soon as you get out there, like Nick Chubb comes back, he presumably looked great in camp, but like you put him out there, it's not the same guy it was before he blew his knee to pieces.
Yep.
And it's like that must be a difficult thing to try and quantify when you're gauging the return of some of these players. Particularly, I mean, again, it's July, like the running backs aren't doing most of the things that make them look good to be running backs, right? Like nobody's in pads, nobody's hitting, it's probably quite easy to look good right now because you're running on air in wide open spaces.
Right.
You just have to be functional from an athletic standpoint, but it's not the same thing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
The New Orleans Saints have a couple of interesting names to bring up. None bigger, I guess, than their first-round draft pick, Jordan Tyson.
So when Jordan Tyson came out, did you notice how like it just was escalating?
Yeah.
All of the stuff about his injuries. And I put a high warning on him when he was getting drafted, but it actually wasn't because of his previous knee injury. He was injured back in 2022 with his knee, and then he had a freak collarbone fracture. The one that I was most concerned of was bilateral hamstrings. So that tells me that not only one, but both of his hamstrings suffered a setback and are probably going to be issues to deal with. Now, is that part of the ACL? Well, research does show that there is a correlation between a hamstring strain and an ACL, and that is more common. Is it one of those where you kind of look at like maybe the Christian Watson situation and say, is there like a discrepancy in hamstring strength or whatever that might be? Yeah, but he definitely, it was concerning just to hear about that.
And the length of time.
Yeah.
It was like he'd injured them in the Texas Tech game or whatever, and then it's like, oh, he's still not ready to run, when it's draft prep time. It's like that's a long time ago now to still be dealing with a hamstring injury.
Yep. It's definitely concerning how much it lingered. Will it rear its ugly head in the season? Maybe. It's really hard to tell, but he does have a more likelihood of injuring his hamstrings. It's just a fact the way stats are. I'm not honestly concerned about the knee, obviously not concerned about the collarbone, but that's going to be the test.
Yeah, I mean it's the hamstrings and how long they lingered, plus the fact that just you're now stacking up that number of injuries is concerning in and of itself.
Yep.
What about obviously you've got Chris Olave and his concussion history as well.
Yeah.
So you've got a couple of pretty injury-prone players from the looks of it at one position, which can't feel great for the Saints. Anybody else for the Saints?
Just watch for Kamara. He was limited to 11 games last year, knee ankle stuff. Nothing that came out said that was absolutely terrible, but he also has had previous knee issues and ankle issues. I just want to make sure that he's good to go. They're not saying anything about him not being ready week 1. So.
Right. Tampa Bay Buccaneers would be up next. What have we got for the Bucs?
I think the big one is Bucky Irving. So he hurt his shoulder. When you sublux a shoulder, your rate and risk of subluxing a shoulder again go up tremendously.
What does that mean?
So sublux means it kind of goes out of socket, in socket. The name that comes to mind with this was Dalvin Cook. Dalvin Cook had 3 to 4 subluxed shoulders in his career, but it was like nothing. He braced it up. You probably saw by the end, like he was throwing that big black brace on his shoulder. So they're doing everything they can to stabilize Bucky Irvin's shoulder. They're trying to keep it strong, rotator cuff strengthening, everything like that. He's either going to be one of those people that becomes chronically unstable, or he's going to be one of those that you never hear about this again. So,
and then you got Benjamin Morrison listed here as well, who's suddenly a pretty important player for them, given what they've done at the cornerback position.
Yeah, he just has had lower extremity issues and injuries over the years, but coming out, obviously, we knew about that. So he's going to be somebody that I'm just going to keep an eye on to see if any of those college injuries come back to bite him, especially for somebody who they're relying on. Right, he's going to be a big part of that team.
Do you have any concerns for Baker Mayfield, given his propensity to play through injuries and not play well when he's playing through injuries? Like, unlike you've got Mahomes who plays through injury, or Josh Allen, and those guys don't really exhibit any drop-off when they play through, and then you got Baker where he'll gut it out as well as anybody, but it doesn't tend to go well when he does that.
Right, dude, Baker is like one of those, like, you love the grit in him and the way that he just fights, but he also is just, he's so aggressive as a quarterback, and he definitely has a large injury history. I'm not concerned about any of that going into this season, but I would say that you and I would not be surprised if he gets hurt again this year. Like, we just wouldn't. It's just the nature of the way he plays. That should definitely be into consideration as a coach on when do you pull a guy who's just trying to play through too much like that.
Yeah, I mean, how do you save him from himself? It's also tricky in that, like, he probably can play through some of the stuff he's playing through, but it's not even there's no shame in this, but he just doesn't react as well to injuries, to playing through injuries as some other quarterbacks do. Like, unfortunately for Baker, when he gets hurt, his level of play seems to drop off dramatically relative to some other guys. And that's not necessarily his fault, but it does mean that the question of when you sit him down is quicker to be asked than for other quarterbacks who, may be able to play through what he's playing through and maintain a higher level. It's a kind of tough spot that he's in. Plus, with him, he's not going to react well to getting sat down, even if it's for his own benefit. So it is a kind of awkward situation for Baker uniquely. The Arizona Cardinals, last division, NFC West.
Yeah. Big one here is James Conner. So he had a severe right foot injury. I don't know if you remember that, but it was pretty brutal looking down. It's kind of reminded me of like the Cam Scatterbo injury. So for him, it's just about, is he going to be able to bounce back from this when you dislocate or fracture an ankle and then you have all the tears around that ligament and you're a running back, you're just piling up these variables. And he's going to be questionable week 1, but on the other side, he's an older running back. Yeah. He's no spring chicken, so we'll see what happens with him.
And I know they've given him a solid contract, but it's, there's probably some signal in the fact that they've also drafted Jeremiah Love and added Tyler Algier in the offseason as well. It's like, they can't feel that great about James Conner going forward. They certainly have the replacements long-term for him. Walter Nolan, I think is probably one you need to talk about, who looked fantastic for the brief period we saw him as a rookie, and then he got hurt.
Walter Nolan was an interesting one, too, because I think that he's aggressive, he's a big guy, but I don't know if he was playing. It almost seemed like he wasn't playing to his capacity. I don't know if he was playing with a hurt knee and then tore it, but he tore his left meniscus. I didn't hear any reports on anything else, but if that's the case, then he should be good to come back. But it was one of those interesting ones where you kind of watch a guy and you're like, is there something going on? Like, what's happening? And I think it could have definitely been that he was having irritation in that meniscus and then something finally caused it to fully tear, or that he just was playing on a partially torn meniscus that they had to finally operate on.
All right, let's move on to the Rams. This time a year ago, everyone was panicking because Matthew Stafford's back was sore. He was a couple of weeks from being thrown into some sort of recuperation airstream. We were like, man, this could be it for him. And then he plays and nobody talks about his back again. He has an MVP caliber season. So what are we talking about with Stafford?
I would say the one thing you would say with Stafford is that I think I'm putting his back into the category of chronic.
Okay.
So I would not be surprised if he's just on this regular back maintenance program.
It's also like, I mean, I this is one of the few things I called correctly last season, which was we're going to get to the season. I was slightly wrong. I was like, he's going to show up on the injury report every week with a back injury, but it won't actually affect him.
That's so true.
Actually, he didn't even, I think, show up in the injury report. It just went away and was never a thing again. But it seems like we're just going to be talking about things that are falling off Stafford until he stops playing, but he's going to go out there and look the same no matter what.
Yep, it wouldn't surprise me a bit if he's like on the injury report every single week. And hey, if they can maintain his back, I know that when they took X-rays last year, they were negative, so it's not like he's dealing with a fracture. Right. So if they can maintain his back, they'll be good to go.
He's a guy, though, that I do wonder how he's going to age, because he's had that sort of Brett Favre career arc of playing through everything. You know, he's been hurt, but he's gone out there and done it anyway. He's taken a lot more wear and tear, I would say, than some quarterbacks. And at 38 now, like, he's reaching that age where that used to be game over time for quarterbacks. Obviously, he's still playing at an incredibly high level, but, you know, is he reaching that cliff level of you taking that kind of damage over their career and you're now 38, you know, that's 42 for some other guy that's taking less damage. Like you're on a clock at this point.
Yeah, I do agree with that. I wouldn't be surprised if over the next couple of seasons we see the downhill trajectory there.
Yeah. Okay. Next up, or anybody else for the Rams?
Not really. No. I'm good.
The Puka Nacua, what was he dealing with late in the season that had him as a question mark? Is he just 100% at this point?
Puka's 100%. Not anything that, I mean, I don't know about mentally if he's 100%.
Yeah.
But he hasn't, I mean, all I knew that he was having lower extremity, knee/ankle stuff, but I think he was sore. I think he was probably dealing with a couple strains or.
And he aggravated on a deep target in the end zone or something. Yeah. All right, now we get the fun. We get the San Francisco 49ers and the substation. So
let's go.
What's the substation taking down? How many players are missing? Who's out? Everyone's hurt.
Why don't we count this as a brief rundown for these guys, because we could dive into a whole lot of stuff.
Okay.
I want to talk George Kittle,
Yep.
Achilles tendon rupture. We talked about that already, but he had
late in the season.
It late in the season. His recovery is just going to be based off of the new procedure we just talked about too.
So it's another great example of a guy who's timescale wise, he'll be good to go week one because it's shortened, but is he going to be anything like the player he was when he got hurt?
Right.
At least initially.
Older, but modern speed bridge surgery on the on the Achilles. It will be very interesting to see how it comes back, especially for a guy who's so utilized in the blocking game.
Yeah.
Tons of force put on that heel. So I'm very interested to see his level of recovery. The one I also wanted to bring up was Christian McCaffrey. His ankle and calf injury history is absurd. If there's any type of warning sign that you would sit there and say either Achilles rupture or severe ankle injury, I would say look at Christian McCaffrey's history. So just wanted to throw that out there. I never wish somebody would get hurt, but I also think that I was looking at the list of lower extremity injuries. He's been banged up.
And weird ones. Like he had that thing where he's dealing with like calf soreness that was just like he might miss next week, and then that became like a massive long-term chronic problem that ended up with him going to Germany and getting stem cells or whatever, right? Like he's had some weird stuff that he's dealt with.
Definitely lingered. Bosa, let's put this in the category of the Parsons, right? He running around the edge and ACL just goes. Two big guys, a lot of force, a lot of planting on that outside leg. So I'll be really interested to see, because he's also had a left ACL tear. So this is his right.
Okay.
So he's going to be dealing with bilateral ACL tears. Coming off of that at his age, we'll see what he does.
Is there, for an edge rusher that tears an ACL, would you be more or less concerned about keeping a guy off? So you think of that mechanism as like running the arc and it's the outside knee that goes, right? Would you be concerned about a guy so he tears a specific ACL and that's the side he lines up on versus let's keep him away from that side for a while? Like let's ease him back in on the other side of the line before.
That's a good question. I was thinking about that. I was like, is that a strategy that coaches use? And then also, in the game, you would know way better than I would on like which DNs tend to rush by both sides, which DNs stay on one side. That's a really good question.
Like if you had a guy who played, let's say he just played 50% of the time on either side, right? But he tears one ACL, would you be like, well, for the first half a season you come back, you're going to be 100% on the other side?
Yeah,
you're
or
just
at
not
least,
going to line up on that side.
At least taper it down a little bit.
Yeah.
I would 100% agree with that because your outside leg when you're on the bend takes like twofold the amount of pressure on the inside leg.
Right.
So he's definitely going to be putting that right ACL to the test the first time he rushes off that right end.
Fred Warner, another one of their most important players, obviously coming off a season-ending injury for him.
Yeah, basically, if you didn't see Fred Warner's injury, it's just a pretty catastrophic, air casted. I would again put this in line with some of the other guys that just had like leg fractures, dislocations in the ankles. I don't know exactly how his rehab is going, but I also know that Fred Warner is pretty darn tough, and I wouldn't be surprised if he gets back sooner rather than later. The one thing about some of these injuries that you see is like, especially like an ankle fracture like this, the ankle fractures that we alluded to today with the dislocations or the ligament tears, there was no way to prevent those. Right. Like these guys, all three of them were just wrong place, wrong time. So I think that he should be okay. It happened in October, so he's going to have a questionable return, but we're going to see what week, if they put them in on week 1 or what week he comes back.
And just to, without dedicating more oxygen to this than it deserves, the substation thing is conspiracy theory bullshit, correct? from a science perspective, from everything you know.
Yeah, I think it's pretty conspiracy theory. I kind of like to dive into it, though. I don't know about you, but they're going to try to come up with everything. I mean, the turf one was a big one. The substation one is big. Does it really affect them? I
watched like a 25, 30-minute YouTube video from some doctor who went in like
overanalyzing.
Well, even just statistically, it doesn't hold up. Like, this guy was sort of using certain numbers that make the 49ers look terrible. But it's like he's looked at players coming into the 49ers and going away from the 49ers. So, like, there's no evidence that Shanahan, creates a problem or that if the substation thing was real, then players who had been somewhere else who came in would be more injured with the 49ers than they were elsewhere.
Right.
That's not true. Players that leave, you would think, would be then less injured. That's not true either. And even the 49ers haven't broadened it over a period of time, and they're not the most injured. So it doesn't seem to hold up under any kind of significant scrutiny.
Right. And for people that don't know, this substation thing is like this electromagnetic field.
Right.
That's affecting
It's theoretically
these players.
supposed to be ruining everybody.
Now, I mean, you just pick anything. You could sit there and say that the Cincinnati Bengals being next to like
the train
and coal piles, So I don't know. I don't look into that at all. But it's funny because we just went through the team with the most significant injuries. So.
I mean, yeah, that's why it came up, right? Is like, oh, look, all the 49ers' most important players are hurt. It must be the electricity. Right. Final team, Seattle Seahawks. Zach Charbonnet, I think, is the most interesting player because. Late season ACL tear. So we are presuming he's going to be missing the start of the season. They obviously, that sort of affected how they drafted. They went and drafted a running back, Jadarian Price, in the first round in large part because they had let Kenneth Walker leave. Zach Charbonnet is presumably going to miss a chunk of the season, so you have to go and get somebody.
Yeah, so this one was a clean tear from what I read, so just the ACL. But the one thing about Charbonnet that's, I think, an interesting perspective for people to look at is why would they rush him back when they feel like they've got a good replacement in place if he can be more of a complementary back? if you use the 9-month rule for him, he's going to be out for a while. Obviously, he's not going to hit the start of the season. But why would you rush a guy like that back when you're going to rely on him late in the season, and he's going to be a great complement to Price? So I'll be interested to see how they handle it. From everything I hear, though, like surgery is great, and he's healing well. This stage in his rehab, he's not really doing tons of extraneous exercise, but like sprinting and stuff like that, and straight line is the first thing to come back, and then the cutting comes back after that.
All right, that's going to do it for the new and improved Boo Boo Breakdown over here at Check the Mic. Vic, thank you so much for coming to the new studio and breaking all that down for us.
Appreciate it, Sam. Thanks.
All right, we will be back soon, and we'll talk to you then. Thanks for watching.